wife both got killed on a motorcycle. Tonight, Don Nussbaum had his wife make up a beautiful card, and he wants to make sure everyone at least gets to sign. If you'd like to put anything in it, that's fine, but at least make sure and sign it so it can get to the family on behalf of the committee. So if you want to afterwards, if you haven't signed it already, see Supervisor Nussbaum. Everyone, please sign in. Everybody's on right there. Okay, let's call this meeting to order of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors, September 19th, being 6 o'clock. The first thing, everyone is signed in, so we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Powers.
Good and gracious Creator, bless the leaders of our land that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to others. We ask grace on those who hold responsibilities and administrative authority in our cities and counties. Give us courage, wisdom, and foresight to provide for the needs of all our people. Amen.
Supervisor Albrecht. Motion made and second for this evening's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. This time we'll allow from the public to go ahead and speak on anything that has to do with county board. You will have 2 minutes to go ahead and speak on anything on the county. But you have 2 minutes to speak. So come forward, state your name and address.
Thank you. Name is Sid Opperman, 4608 County Road E, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So, as the Highway Committee members know, I want to thank them for helping me out for getting this ball rolling in my ditch situation. Basically, I'm here to talk about my ditch situation. I want this resolved, and I go all the time, and the ball's rolling, but it's rolling really slow, okay? The one thing I'd like to see is the county exec come out and look at this situation, okay? Because what we got out there is a liability to the county as of right now. Because we got a set of culverts that go underneath County Road E that you can come out there and look if you want. The bottoms are eaten out of them. The water doesn't want to flow in between the culverts. It goes in between the culverts and not through them, okay? The drainage is terrible. The highway shop has come out and cut my ditch. But what we need done is we need this resolved. The other thing is that Bob Damo, the county highway commissioner, has always got a problem. Either it's a hostile situation out there, he'll come up with that, or it's a pond, or it's the woodchucks that are digging underneath there. But you guys want to come out there and look at the side of the road, how it's breaking away, or it's going to start breaking away. Sooner or later, somebody's going to go over that, and it's going to collapse, And he don't want to enforce anything, like some other stuff that was happening. People were dumping stuff in the ditch, and they didn't want to come out and ditch it out. Well, the ordinance says that if you build a house, you can't dump the ditch from the dirt from the house into the ditch. I think that was resolved, but, you know, you guys just need to focus on the county, you know? And you guys are spending time here trying to change rules, you know, by changing one word or something in an ordinance. Come on, you know, you need to take the business. You need to do what you need to do. If there's ditch problems, you know, my ditch problem could be different from somebody half a county over. You know, it ain't the same situation, you know, and you guys just need to get down to business and do that. The other thing I want to do is I want to thank the Parks Department, because I purchased a bench for my brother-in-law, and everything was getting overgrown out there. And I went to them and the committee there and asked them to clean it out. And he jumped in there and they got it cleaned out within two weeks, you know. So you guys need to enforce the directors of the departments to do their jobs, okay? And it don't seem like that's been happening, you know. You guys got money that was budgeted for projects in 2017 that is just sitting there because the project wasn't done or used. You know, you guys don't talk about that at these meetings here, you know, but if you go to each and every one of them committee meetings, that's where you learn stuff. That's where anybody learns anything. And anybody that's going to be running against you guys in county board, just make sure that you go to these committee meetings and understand how the county operates. And a lot of you new people need to listen to the older people. You might not have the same opinion as them, but take your opinion and their opinion and come to a compromise and figure things out. So, John, I hope you call me tomorrow, come out and look at my situation. Now, with that shoulder issue with the stuff going across County Road E,
Time's
you guys
just
can
about
go
up,
to the
just so you know.
taping and find out that I brung that up 90 days ago. You mean the highway department can't go out there with a dump truck, throw some gravel on there so somebody goes off the road there and that collapses, it's going to be an accident. And that I'm on record talking about this at the highway committee meetings is a liability for Winnebago County, and it's going to cost you guys more money if somebody gets hurt. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wishing to speak to the board this evening? Anyone else? Anyone else wishing to speak to the board this evening?
Shauna Zestera, 1882 Clareville Road. I would like to talk about the importance for us as supervisors to be aware of the situation that is going on around us with the constitutional rights being eroded or being threatened. I would first of all recommend that anybody who is interested and willing to start listening to information radio at 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock on 89.9 FM or 690 AM. This is VCY America out of Milwaukee, and they will let you know what is going on beyond what we hear on mainstream media. Are you aware that there is the desire for 30% of land to be taken by the feds throughout the United States? 30 for 30, 2030. We need to be educated on what is going on. I think a lot of us just blindly have faith in the higher-ups having our best interest in mind. I want to say also, it breaks my heart that Milwaukee Madison will start aborting babies again on Monday. I personally believe that I will be judged, and that's why I hurt over that decision. I want to thank the county for sending me to the WCA conference. Thank you, Chairman Egan. It was very nice for you to take the time out of your busy schedule to be there, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else? Anyone else? Is there anyone on Zoom? We'll consider that part closed. Communications, petitions, memorial accounts, and commendations.
Good evening, everyone. We have one resolution from Polk County supporting a restitution court program for Polk County. We have one petition for a zoning amendment from Ellen St. Pierre, changing from A2 to R1 in the town of Neenah. We have two commendations tonight. One is for Peggy Heisey. Peggy Heisey began her career at Winnebago County in 2000 working in small claims for the clerk of courts. She transferred to the Planning and Zoning Office in August of 2012 as the planning secretary and later the department's administrative associate. Peggy was a hard worker, dedicated to her job, and was the go-to person in the department. She excelled at handling many priorities at once and working effectively with those individuals the department served, including other county departments, county board supervisors, local government officials, and the general public. With 23 years of exemplary service to the county, Peggy retired from the Planning and Zoning Department on August 2nd, 2023. She will be missed by her coworkers and the many friends she made in other county departments. Please join me in expressing our best wishes for Peggy in her retirement. The next one is a commendation for Diane Mulder. We thank Diane for all her years of service at Parkview Health Center. She was instrumental and vital to the care to some of the county's most vulnerable, our dementia aging population on Lakeside 1. Diane was a hard worker, and we cannot thank her enough for the wonderful care she gave to everyone she served. She will be truly missed by all of us at Parkview Health Center. We wish her the best in her retirement. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Committees, commissions, and boards. Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to remind the board that 4 days ago, Hispanic Heritage Month began, and in 12 days from today, Breast Cancer Awareness Month begins, and I would urge all women to schedule your mammograms, and all the men, encourage the women in your lives to get themselves screened. Thank you.
Supervisor Bender.
I also got the opportunity to attend the conference, and one of the biggest things I learned is the solar, there's really not much regulations on that, and them contracts are really written in favor of the utility companies, and what they say is the landowner should really research that and have a good attorney read that over before they sign that. Might look like you're getting a lot of money, but that's a 30-year contract usually, and they happen to know a few people that signed them and really wish they wouldn't have. So anybody that knows anybody that's thinking of leasing land to a solar utility company, you want to make sure you let them know that that contract is in favor of the utility company, and it really gets some attorney that does that type of work to read that contract over thoroughly.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yes, I just want to comment in Winnie County 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, we had a shooting, which is pretty rare for Winnie County, and the response that Winnie County got from the county was absolutely awesome. I didn't even know we had that many police officers, and they all showed up and worked very, very well. So I know this isn't the time or place, but just want to, I think everybody in Winnie County has a renewed respect for our county sheriff's department. Thank you.
Supervisor Haran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also was at the WCA convention over Monday and Tuesday, and I want to say that the programs that I went to I thought were really terrific I stayed until the bitter end, hoping that I was going to win the TV. Aw, shucks. Didn't win it. But they had a gentleman speaking this afternoon whose name is James M. Ulcer, who was the former chief, retired, of the CIA counterintelligence, who gave his story. And he has written a book called To Catch a Spy. And I'll tell you, he was absolutely fascinating, telling about how he got recruited, how he was an Iowa boy and he was going back to Iowa so that he could marry a good Iowa woman and have a family, and ends up getting snagged, I think is a good way of putting it, into the CIA. He was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Flom.
Oh, my light wasn't on. I want to thank the county for sending me to the WCA. One of the things that I was particularly interested in is the progress on Next Gen 911 and implementation. And just a quick point of order, my iPad's out of whack. I know several other supervisors had the same issue, so I didn't see that I was up in the queue, so thank you.
Supervisor Zestero.
Thank you. Just a report on the WCA conference. I listened to the business meeting that Vice Chair Fari represented us at. That was very interesting. That was on Sunday. And there was some discussion on ATV regulation, and especially up in the northern counties. Other things as well that I found helpful. There was the general opening session by the president of WCA was interesting. We got to actually see former Governor Tommy Thompson. He spoke, and that was thrilling. He's 80 years old and raises cattle, and it was just really, really wonderful to see he gave a lot of good advice about leadership. I listened to different alternatives for the court systems, innovations in that. I know Representative or Supervisor Defferding has done a lot of good advocacy for a mental health court, and I would support him in that with, and just a discussion on drug court, OWI court, and I brought up some of the opportunities that our resolution center, which is right on this floor, could possibly help with. So I was able to collaborate with Brown County or Green Bay area. Listen to the solar and wind information, and there was a group there called Farmland First. They had a booth also at the exhibit hall, and they were bringing up resolutions, ordinances that they've been able to pass in this area. So it was very interesting to hear the speakers. There was also like highway weight limits and how they would like to provide funding for main highways at 90%. There was just information that the speaker was giving on that. So overall, I'm very glad to know what the federal and state legislators are discussing and kind of pushing on us. And I would just want to add that we really need to just represent our constituents, because there's just a lot of pressures out there for our attention. Thank you.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I start speaking, I'd just like to let our IT person know that this is happening with everybody else if she's not paying attention right now.
Oops.
It's happening with other people too.
Okay.
All kinds of people over here. Same thing that's happening with mine.
She needs to do something.
Okay.
Remember who's on your list to speak? Okay, what
Is that all you had?
Hold,
Supervisor Albrecht.
hold on.
I just
hold on.
wanted to remind
Hold, stop.
Supervisor Haran, good thing she didn't win the television, because she would have to return it or give it to charity. We have an ordinance that says you can only accept something for $50 or less.
Ooh, thank you.
Okay. Tom?
I'm holding, I'm
Okay.
holding, I'm holding.
I have to hit discuss, so it's gonna wipe out your list.
I don't know why they
So
did that.
whoever is on there will either have to re-sign in.
Okay, so all of you that are on here will have to re-sign in, because they gotta wipe me out, so.
Okay.
Nussbaum, Buck, and I don't know, they already wiped out my list, who the other one was. Okay,
Okay, now did it change? That's where you're supposed to be. Okay.
did we hold as long as
So-
we had to?
Sorry, everybody, my chairman's a little bit faster than I am. It just, I have to hit discuss, and then it will bring everything back up for you, sorry. No, you don't have to sign back in. It's just when you request to speak, if I haven't hit discuss on my screen, it doesn't allow you to do that for this part of the meeting.
Have you hit discussed? Or discussed it?
It's, you should be ready to Supervisor Nussbaum.
Supervisor Nussbaum. Supervisor Nussbaum.
Gotta turn it on.
Consortium price was going up $5,000, and it turns out that the money we sent in was $5,000 short. So I don't know how we go about getting that money to them.
It's a good question. Maybe our county executive will have an answer when he gets up here. Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had a very educational time at the WCA annual conference. I learned a lot in regards to what Brown County has been doing in regards to their alternative courts, and also to provide an update as well. I plan to be meeting with Judge Gibbs tomorrow, along with Heather Faust from Behavioral Health, as well as public defender, someone from the public defender's office for Winnebago County. We'll be meeting tomorrow to talk a little bit about what we can do for those involved in the criminal justice system that have mental health conditions. I did have a conversation with Dr. Topol for almost an hour a few days ago, and we discussed a little bit about the history of mental health courts with Winnebago County, and what things that we can improve on, what things that we can do that we have in place now that might work particularly for our county. So I just wanted to update everyone in regards to that. I'll be doing a further update at the JPS meeting on October 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to let all the supervisors know that at our last Planning and Zoning Committee, the Sawyer Creek floodplain map amendment was put to bed permanently by a 4-to-1 vote, and it will not be coming to this body and in the near future. And we did stress that we would like to see them come back with something newer, something that's more recent, because a lot of the members had issues with how long ago they did the mapping and so on and so forth. So just wanted to let everybody know that that will not be coming here. It is a done issue. It was declined by the committee, and we'll see what happens after going forward. Thank you.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a quick question. I see a vacancy on our list. Who has left, quit, moved? Who's vacant?
I will be reading that. It's Rachel Youngquist.
Okay.
Seeing nothing else, we'll go to the county executive's report.
Thank you. Tonight, I'd like to focus my report on the 2024 county budget, which is currently under construction. In preparing this budget, the county management team and I have had to confront a very different set of challenges that we faced a year ago. And this is for two reasons. First, while our unassigned general fund balance is still healthy, we do not have the excessive fund balance as we did last year. In the end of 2021, our unassigned fund balance was more than 10 million over the targeted range established by our general fund balance policy. Though a combination of borrowing less than usual for capital projects, paying some debt early, and paying some one-time projects using the fund balance, we were successful in reducing the balance to well within the range by the end of 2022. In the current 2023 budget that we are in now, we allocated about $5.5 million unassigned general fund balance in order to make our budget come out even. We will not have the luxury of allocating anything close to this amount for 2024. Second, we have been very much affected by a changing labor market and employee expectations. As you know, earlier this year, we completed a wage study and adjusted pay rates and levels, which will cost a total of about $2.9 million per year before any wage increase for next year. We prepared for this last year by setting aside $2 million in current budget, but that will still leave us a structural deficit of roughly $1 million due to compensation adjustments, which were very much needed, but still have to be paid for. In preparing for the 2023 budget last year, I asked all department heads to submit a base budget which did not increase the tax levy at all. For 2024, I could not ask the departments the same thing because of the compensation changes and other factors. So I asked all departments to submit the best budget they possibly could. Every department came through with a well-considered proposed budget. And I'm very proud of the work that they put in, and I'm very proud of our department heads and other managers that have done the best they could be to be fiscally responsible. I've made some other changes to our budget process as well this year. These changes were made with the intent of improving clarity and reducing confusion. State statute makes it clear, very clear, that it is the role of the county executive to prepare and submit the budget proposed to the board. Then it's the board's role to approve the budget with any amendments that the board chooses to make. Blurring the lines between these two roles has caused confusions in the past. I therefore asked my department heads to not invite committee chairs to our executive budget meetings so we can have open, honest discussions. And also ask them not to submit department proposed budgets to committees until after the final executive budget is completed. This will avoid the confusion caused by considering different drafts of the same budget at different stages in the process. I want you to see one version instead of multiple versions to compare to. The only budget that the board and its committee should consider is the executive budget when we as a team finally complete it. This is in no way intended to deprive committees or board members from access to the full information regarding the various department budgets. The executive budget is scheduled to be completed by the end of this week. This leaves 5 weeks before the budget hearings, and during that time, my management team and I will be happy to attend all meetings of committees of jurisdiction for all departments to help present their proposed budget and answer any questions you may have. We are also available during this time to answer any questions from any individual supervisors. Our goal is to support your consideration for the county budget the best that we can, and to help get you numbers for any amendments you might be considering. One new project, which we think will eventually drastically help the board very much, is understanding the details of the county budget. This project is priority-based budgeting. Department heads have been working hard with the software and our consultant for several months. Frankly, not as far as I'd like to be on priority-based budgeting, and we are behind where I had hoped to be at this time. But it is definitely moving ahead. As part of this project, each department has prepared a list of their programs, and you will see the list in this budget book. One goal is to have each department's revenue and expenses allocated to its various programs, so you could take a look to see what that program actually costs us across the board, which will make it much easier for all of us to understand where our money is going exactly, and to help us to focus on the effectiveness of each program. This will help us to pierce the sometimes opaque curtain formed by page after page of detailed figures in the budget book, and provide an overall much greater transparency to the budget. The idea is to put switches on every program so you as the board can set the policy and decide which programs to fund. In preparing next year's budget, we must keep our eyes to the future. We have taken advantage of a lot of one-time revenue and have undertaken many one-time projects. Increases in ongoing expenses, which are inevitable because of employee costs and other increases, have to be managed to avoid creating structural deficits as long as possible. The need for county services will not end in 2024. Eventually, difficult decisions will have to be made, and we will need to have the best possible information when making those decisions. The budget that I propose will be designed to set us up for the future to the best extent possible. And the budget I hope to propose in 2025 will give you the catalyst and the ability to make smart decisions on where we need to cut to make us financially stable in the future. Thank you.
Supervisor Albrecht.
Will you be inviting the chairs of each committee to sit in on the budget process?
We did not this year.
Okay, so I won't be invited to sit in on the budget. So then I'm not good enough to support your budget, huh?
No, you're good enough for us to come to the committee and show the budget.
Okay.
And we can ask the questions there.
Okay.
Supervisor Dowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you back again, John.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the information about the budget. I will definitely dig into that more. I did want to talk about the amendment to Resolution 258 that we passed on August 15th. That was passed by voice vote. You specifically brought up that you did not sign this resolution, even though we as a county board passed it during the ARPA meeting. In fact, Ethan Hollenberger was also quoted saying this in the Neenah newspaper, as well as Mike Colliard brought it up last month. My bigger question is that this isn't how the Wisconsin state statute is written. Wisconsin State Statute 59.17, Item 6, says that you either have 6 days to sign it or return it. So my question is, I don't understand your announcement about why you didn't sign it. I'm curious to know if you did this out of a bullying tactic, or if you did it because you don't understand the parameters of your role.
Well, the first would be a legal question, which I would challenge your interpretation on that. But before we get there, I had some correspondence with Supervisor Hanson, and had eventually did sign the resolution. So it is signed. Mary Ann, I don't know if you care to address that. But it states in a stalemate, an executive doesn't have to sign it. Unless I veto it, it still becomes law.
Right.
It just becomes law or the resolution without my support. If I were to veto it, that would make it come back here for a 2/3 vote.
Correct. So you were trying to not sign it to show you didn't support our decision?
It didn't do anything.
No, I understand. I think the
Correct.
fact, though, that supervisors took their time to write the resolution and to make amendments to it, I think that was probably more important.
Well, that's the balance. I mean, that's a balance between you and me. You are the governing body of 36 that direct policy and budget. And I am the sole position that does operations. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree. Just because I didn't agree doesn't mean I wanted to veto it. I wanted it to allow it to go through. Just wasn't something that I so much supported. But after a conversation, and Connolly, thank you for your correspondence and questions. I really thought about that. And he challenged me. He's like, if you really have a problem with it, veto it and send it back. And after that, I thought about it and said, I really don't have a problem with it if it doesn't do anything, so then I signed it.
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank
all
you
right.
so much.
Yep.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Damo, could you please address again why the chairs were not invited on the budget discussions? Because that doesn't seem transparent.
Sure. For a long time, the roles were confused. There were a lot of committees in the past where board members got into operations, and it was confusing for department heads. They didn't know who was the boss. Supervisor Albrecht, to your response, does Bob Dable report to you, or does he report to me? And it's clearly, since I'm in charge of operations, they report to me. Sometimes department heads disagree with their chair. And I want to know what their honest reason is. And I want them to have a safe spot for them to have an honest discussion with me of where their budget actually should be. That's not to take away your thought process. It's clearly the executive budget to propose. So I want to have those deep, hard conversations with department heads so that at the end of the whole thing, we can sit together with all our decision points and really analyze those and then discuss them instead of promising something in a meeting. Especially if you're an early department head meeting that comes in, I have no idea what the budget looks like at the end. We started with everyone's ask very far away. We've trimmed that to a point where I think is manageable, and actually I feel really good at where we are in the budget, as well as setting aside a decent amount to renegotiate with our deputies, which the Department of Corrections have definitely made that challenging this year. So it's not about me not wanting chairs in those department meetings, about me wanting my department heads to feel they can be as open and honest about their operations with me as possible. And sometimes it's hard when a chairman disagrees with a department head. When the chairman's, it's your role for budget and policy, and it's his role for the operations of his department. So it's for me to make sure that I'm getting the best honest feedback I can out of my department heads. Did that satisfy your question?
I would hope that that doesn't happen again. I would, having been in business, there are disagreements and you just simply have them, and it's, why not have them during those meetings rather than a drawn-out board session? I just wish you would rethink that. Chapter 59 was briefly discussed. Very quickly, because of something else that's going to come up, what is currently the balance of the Spirit Fund and what is the balance of the interest?
I would defer that to Mike, and I don't think we have that really prepared.
Rough estimate. I don't need an exact dollar amount.
Allocated or spent? I mean, we spent quite a significant amount.
What is currently left? What is currently left in the balance of the Spirit Fund? And I understand it's a little more than $1 million in the interest fund. Is that correct?
Maybe, yeah, probably 1.5 in the interest fund, probably 18 million left to allocate, I would guess.
That's really all I needed.
One second. Our finance director, Paul Kaiser, is here.
Interest is probably around about 1.6 million in total at the end of September. Right now, it's probably 450, probably about 150,000 a month is going in. There is 10.6 million, I think, that has been allocated of the 23 or 33 million. So there's probably about 22.5 million that has not been allocated at this point. What has actually been spent is about 600,000 because the projects haven't gotten started, and the POs for the sheriffs are starting to come in, but so far we've only paid about 600,000 out for that and about 105,000 for the priority-based budgeting.
Or they have, and we can't get the product. Supervisor Buck, last meeting, I think you talked about the radios. Those were ordered the day after. There's still supply chain issues. We're still waiting for those radios to come in. We can't pay a bill until we have goods to pay for.
I'm more interested in just, so about 1.6 in interest, and is it around 18 million then in unallocated?
Sounds like 21.
I think about 20 million, 20.5.
And then, Mr. Dable, I know that it is budget time, and I know that you are very busy. I would like you to at least acknowledge my email of August 31st. Thank you. Not here. You can do it by email.
I'll have to check because I don't believe I have any unresponded emails. So if I missed that, I apologize.
Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County Executive Damo, I just want to touch base on the PGI fireworks show on August 13th and August 18th. As you are well aware, it was, for some, a controversy. For others, it was a great show. Do you have any facts or figures, or point me in the right direction about what kind of revenue that brought into the county?
First of all, I do want to say I'm empathetic to those that were adversely affected by it. It did bring in a good sum. Our Parks Director is here. I'm sure Adam hasn't, if you give it a minute or so, he probably has some numbers he's pulling up right now. I see him doing the work. But we were able to raise a fair amount of money, and also some money for the fair board, and also some money for the soccer clubs that use the fields. Adam, do you have some of those?
Yep. Yeah, so the numbers are about 99% complete. Was working on one final bill today, but overall, the amount that was brought in from the two events itself and from the rental of the expo was $253,618, and $2,900 is going back to the fair for their help with the bar, and $1,930 is going back to United Soccer for their help with parking.
And if I could follow up, what was the revenue we were marked for the horse show that week?
A typical, we had one inquire, a typical horse show is about 10,000 on average. Just depends on the size of the horse show.
It's my understanding that PGA will not be back next year. If have the opportunity again, would that be something that you would invite them back to our community?
I think I would definitely entertain it. I think there are some valid points made. For instance, I think they can be done before midnight. I don't think 1 o'clock would be needed, but again, that's not for us to decide. That's the city of Oshkosh to decide. They had one event in particular where it was from 5 to 6. If those that lived out there, if you heard the loudest bangs from 5 to 6, there was an event to see how loud of a bang they could get. You could hear it, Nina, and even PGI was split over that. Some of them loved it, some of them didn't love it. That being said, the two public shows that did go on, the feedback was absolutely phenomenal. We did receive a little over 58 calls in my office, and we did register what they were complaining about, what the issue was. The number one complaint that we heard from constituents was wildlife. And Adam I did check with Adam. We were happy to announce that the osprey is alive and well. And so are the baby ospreys.
So I get moving forward, the county board gave the, I guess, permission to zone that, so we would be in the clear for that. Next time it'd be a decision, on the executive if they wanted to sign a contract with a fireworks vendor like PGI. Is that correct?
Correct. It would be more of a city decision, and because of some of the controversy with the towns, the town of Oshkosh, we made sure that all the fireworks were done on city land. Is that correct, Adam? Is that we did not use town land to launch any of the fireworks?
Yeah, all of the property, because for those of you that don't know, the expo's kind of split, city and town. All of the fireworks were lit off in the city property.
Yep, and I did make Adam stay out there till 1 a.m. Every day just to make sure we weren't lighting off anything. So thank you for that.
And to your recollection or knowledge, there was no fires, because there was quite the rumor mill going around about fires out there and blowing up trees. Everything went off without a hitch. There wasn't any bit damage to anybody's property.
There was a fire in a ditch, and we need to work on some communication there. And Adam, you had more knowledge on it, so I'm going to let you, if that's okay, may Adam address that? Yeah.
Yep. So we were made aware of the fire in the ditch of the neighbor one of the neighbors to the north. I went out to the property the next day and spoke with her for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. She toured me out there where it was. It was about 100 feet it was in the ditch completely. It was about 100 feet long by about 30 feet wide.
And to another point, if we were to invite them back, wind should be a consideration. I don't think I would have had a campfire that night.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor Gabbard.
I bet that you were surprised when I showed up for the budget meeting. I don't know if I'm the Lone Ranger here, but I was invited by the department head of the airport to attend the budget. So I walked in. I had no idea I wasn't supposed to be there. Okay? So it happened to be the same day that you were out at the highway department. So I apologize that I showed up, but I've been there before, and I'm pretty much a church mouse. And I don't direct the director what to do. I know what the scope is here of who's in charge and what's going on. So in my position as chairman of the aviation committee, I've never tried to run the ship. So that accusation tonight hits my heart because I have never done that, never. And Jim invited me, so I hope he keeps his job because he invited me to go to the meeting. I think it's important, in my perspective, that the chairman is there. We're going to have it at our committee meeting. It will be presented. But I had no plans to be derogatory about anything in the budget. I'm a money person, and I like to look at how Jim puts together his budget, which I thought was put together well. And I think your reception to that, when you got to the meeting, was the same. I don't think that there was a lot of critique. There was adjustments by Mike with the new system, and that was well received. That was done. I understand that on fringes and things. So I guess I'm offended as a chairman that you don't think we're qualified to sit at that meeting. That's just my personal opinion. And you know that you and I have disagreements, but at the end of the day, we both go home and we're real people. So I don't like the tactics that's in the background here. I see nothing wrong with the chairman going there. And if you have chairmen that are derogatory, you know how to handle that. So that was offensive to me. I'm not going to apologize for that, John, because it wasn't meant to be a surprise to any of you folks there. Paul was there, Carol was there, Mike was there, you were there. You were all very polite to me. I never sensed that I shouldn't have been in that room. So I just don't want Jim to take the hit for that. If you had told him not to invite, I'm sorry about that. So can you clarify that situation to me?
Sure. First, I want to apologize. I meant no offense by it. It is not a trust factor between me and you. Supervisor Gabbard, we have been nothing but brutally honest with each other, and that's one of the things I love most about our relationship. I was never going to ask you to leave that. Jim is fine. It is okay. Jim spaced that part and the reason we did it. But some of those reasons is sometimes we want to talk about positions that maybe sound great, right? But when we look at every position that's being asked for in the county, maybe one's more important than the other, and this one has to get cut. That's not actually a cut. But then if you hear it and then all of a sudden it's not in the budget, it looks like it's a budget cut. The same thing happened in Human Services when they said that I cut 1.8 million from the budget, which wasn't the case. It was, I didn't agree with an additional 1.8 that they wanted to have. For instance, in that, it's so that we can have those discussions about the truck. Jim has been very lenient with me. He's asked for 3 years in a row for a truck, right? Mm-hmm. And we said no once because Land and Water's truck was really old and really needed. We said no the second year because Parks really needed theirs. Theirs goes on the highway where their truck just goes on the airport. So if a tire falls off, it's not going to go into a lane of traffic, so we can go a little bit longer. Well, this year it wasn't in there, and it was put in the CIP where it doesn't belong, right? So we were actually able to put it back into, the decision point was made to put it back into capital outlay where it belongs. But the reason we do that is that so that you don't get the pitch, the high-end ass pitch of all the department heads of what they want and then think you need it. You need to let me and our team do our job to see who everybody is asking for and bring it down to what we think is reasonable. Otherwise, you get sales pitches that you hear that may not be granted, and then what happened to this position, what happened to that position. We have some hard decisions to make on some very good positions. There are some very strong positions to ask. You heard a couple of them at JPS, right? I may not have one or either of those positions in my budget when it comes to it. You know, do I have to decide between somebody who's going to help with internet crimes, or do I decide between a position that can give same-day mental health services up in Neenah? These are the decisions I have to make. So when you're in those meetings, I want to hear their best shot of what they actually need. And sometimes when chairman's in, it's not always about a bad relationship. It's about us trying to really feel what that department needs. So I apologize. I meant no disrespect for that. It's how we tear down the silos and build one county budget. And a lot of our department heads back here will tell you that it's taken a little bit, right, for us to grasp that, but we understand it now. We understand that sometimes the sacrifice of my department will do a greater good for the whole county. And that's the whole reason we're doing that. I apologize if you felt disrespectful. I was never going to ask you to leave. I don't think I'd ever ask you to leave. Jim will not be in trouble, and it was fine. I apologize that I made you feel
Just
that
so
way.
the board understands, I don't care about the truck.
Yep.
And I never brought it up in the conversation.
Never did.
But I sat there in my mind going, well, we didn't get it this year, we didn't get it last year. So maybe we'll get it in 2-3 years, because I understand that.
Yep.
And I understand that you have to wait to get things. So I didn't bring that up at all. I just saw how it was.
Yep.
And I get, you got a tough job.
Yep.
But there's 36 of us that have a tough job every time we come to this county board. So we all work together, and we all listen to each other. We don't have to agree. And I don't agree with what you say sometimes, and you know that. But at the end of the conversation, we can shake hands, walk away, and say, there. I did not speak out at that meeting, and I want them to know that.
Yep.
So I feel I was maybe the only chairman that went to any budget meetings. Is that correct?
Yeah, there were two.
There were two?
Yep.
Okay.
Thus far. And just to follow up a little bit on that, and one of the directions I want to go is we never really see actuals. And that's one thing I want to start getting department heads is kind of show you the actuals of where they are quarterly through the year so you can see how that budget's going. I want to be able to show you how much a program costs, whether it even be the intern. The intern, we did an intern this year for the airport. It was great. But you should know the full cost of what that intern was, how much we had to pay her. We covered room and board, which allowed us to pay less. What's the value of that? Will we get something great out of that? And those are the programs I want you to know that your airport provides, so you can make decisions when it comes down to the budget on what you want to turn on and what you want to turn off. And that's the authority I'm trying to get you. Right now, I look at high lines and I see a labor budget for a department, but I can't tell you what job does what. I can't tell you how much each one costs. And that's the direction I want to get to eventually. We have bleed over in other departments. We have budget dollars in other departments that actually go toward other departments. So you should know the program, where the dollars are, and what the outcomes are.
So you do realize at the airport and at Parkview, every one of our monthly meetings, we receive the budget with expenses balance left. I thought all departments did that because I think that's a great thing. I don't know if they do. I know planning and zoning doesn't, but Jim, in our agenda, we've always got a copy of the budget. We can ask questions. Parkview the same way. We can see what was actual, previous, current, and balance left. I think that's a good take for the committee members to see that, and then you know how this is operating.
Right.
So I don't think anything that we've been doing in the past is wrong. And yes, it is your budget. I understand that. And I wish you the best of luck bringing it to balance because I don't know where that's going to happen, but I could see this coming over the past 3 years, that we're gonna reach a point where we're gonna have to do cuts of some kind. So I wouldn't want your job. But just so you understand where I'm coming from, because I didn't do anything intentionally wrong here.
And I didn't think you did.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Haran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got 3 questions. Progress on the 980s, the medical examiner's building, and how many dollars did we get from the opioid settlement?
All right, so 980s are moving. We finally have, I think, some pads in the ground. We had to do, we had to put in a septic system first. I know there's movement there because there's the backhoe there. And there's a little back and forth with the city of Oshkosh. Finally got them to agree on some of the plans. So there's some zoning issues that we figured out. So that is moving. We had some issues with the medical examiner, the morgue, and the storage area. After the accident on Highway 41 where we had a semi-truck go through a house, as tragic as that is, we had to think this is something that we have to store as evidence for maybe a long period of time. So the sheriff said, all right, I need something where we can pull a semi into. And for all of you who have been to our sheriff's department, that front parking lot is not the easiest to navigate, especially if you don't have, especially if you have a semi. So we figured out a way to use the parking lot of the transfer station for solid waste to have it come in, and we can drive straight through so we can get a semi in when we need to. So we had to reconfigure where it was going to go and everything else around that so that we could, we wanted to make sure that we were accounting for everything. The last thing we want to do is come back and ask for more money because we didn't think of something. And obviously, this was something that happened, might happen again. We want to make sure we can get what we need to through that evidence locker. So that's been the holdup there, but I'm happy with the progress. Hopefully now we will get a shovel in the ground.
And then finally, how much money did we get for the opioid settlement?
There are 3 settlements in total. So the first one came in, and Mike, I'm going to give you some time to try to figure that out. None of it's been on schedule. Some of it's been early. The second one has been settled. I don't believe we've received anything for the second settlement yet. We have used those dollars to fund the Connect program across from the courthouse, diversion program to help people get through treatment and connect them with some services. So we've been doing that just to see if we can get some results. But Mike, you got the numbers? Was that enough time to be close?
I didn't find the exact numbers. We can look up how much we've actually received to date. I want to say it's about $1.5 million or a little more than that. In terms of what we've actually got in hand, it tends to show up unannounced with no prior warning in an amount we don't expect, and the treasurer's office calls and says, does anyone know what this money is for? It's so disorganized. I'm very unhappy with this whole system. We have a projection of how much we're expected to get over the next 10 to 15 years from only the first set of settlements. The second set of settlements, I have a vague idea of how much money is there, but no projection how much per year is coming. On the first settlement, the projection I have is clearly inaccurate, and one company decided to send 5 years in all at once, so that's already included. So I realize this is not a very satisfying answer, because it's all over the board. The third settlement, we have no idea yet.
It makes it really difficult to project the stream, right?
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I was at the meeting today at the Dells, talking about the opioid issues that are going on. And of course, I'm sitting there having watched something talking about the latest drug that causes your skin to fall away.
Xylazine.
And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how on earth do you get ahead of this?
Correct. And it's not an opioid, it's a sedative, so Narcan does not work.
Exactly.
Right.
So anyway, I thank you very much for your answers, both of you. Yes, sir.
I just want to supplement my answer a little bit. If I may, Mr. Chairman, just something you might find interesting. I was at the National Association of Counties Conference in July with the county executive and a few other people. One session I went to was a meeting of primarily county administrators and executives, and to discuss, among other things, the opioid settlement. And we kind of went around the room and, asked whoever had a story about how they were handling their settlement proceeds. And I listened to about 12 different county executives and administrators talk about how they were forming study groups and commissions and blah, 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 and getting community input. Not a single one of them, after about 12, had a story about something they were actually spending the money on that was impacting the community. So I figured I have to end this. I put up my hand and I told them, we're spending this, and I described the Connect program, which is where we're spending the biggest portion of our settlement so far. Everyone in the room was very impressed. I had 5 people ask me for my contact information because I was the only one. We were the only county, I should say. I'm not taking personal credit, but we were the only county that had actually had something hit the road in terms of immediately affecting people who needed treatment, and we could get them in a lot faster after their court appearance, see them the same day, walk across the hall, boom. People were very impressed by that, so I felt proud of our county's performance there.
It's very interesting as I get more involved in what the county does, the action that takes place. Actually, as something is being discussed, the action is taking place, and it is just very exciting to see that going on. And I thank you all for everything that you do, because your task is not simple. Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Estero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so Executive Damel, are you looking forward to the baby coming in 8 days or so?
Hopefully it's 8 days.
So I would echo the sentiment on some of the supervisors as far as transparency. I love information. I love being able to at least hear it and take notes and digest it. So I would just ask if you could consider compromising, or I hear what you're saying with being in our wheelhouses and all of that. So I just wanted to, if I may, make that comment to you. And then as far as budget, when I was visiting with the jail administrator one day, I was dropping off the books Supervisor Powers requested. And it was just very apparent to me that when you're looking at the budget, it seemed that it arrested me, pardon the pun, that jailers are, people in the jail, are ones that we need to really be thinking about because of the nature of their job. Any thoughts on that as far as their increase in pay that might be needed?
Well, we are currently negotiating that, so I'm not at will to speak about that, but we are going to try to do for them what we did for everybody else. I mean, our employees are one of my goals. And I think they saw what we did for other employees. I mean, we did the reslotting. We split it between merit and a schedule raise. We're going to be bringing a proposal on benefits, which has been a very wide discussion amongst employees. We've done a few meetings already with that, and so they understand that we are trying to build a people-first culture, because without people you can't do anything. That being said, Department of Corrections took a big swing. We are going to be very hard for us to compete with those numbers, especially with some of the, I guess, incentive pays for the short staff scenarios that they have. That being said, not all jailers in counties are deputized. Ours are. They have some other benefits, and I think that helps them a little bit more. I want to give it my best shot, but it has to be what we can afford.
Yeah. Also, Executive, I wanted to talk with you about, I visited with a veteran supervisor at the conference, and he made a point that money needs to stay within the county and not given to outside enterprises. And the last time you were not able to be here, and the assistant Hollenberger was, but I remembered some discussion with, anyway, I'm bouncing around, I apologize. United Way Director Oswald, she seemed to be surprised that some of us were questioning the focus on nonprofits. And so I guess I wanted to get your feedback on, don't you think ARPA money needs to stay within the county exclusively? I guess I'm not sure why we're looking outside the county
Yeah, I think it,
government.
first of all, everything that you saw was every application we got. I didn't want to withhold anything. So you saw the gamut.
Right.
You saw things in there that maybe I support, maybe I don't support, maybe are in the county, maybe are out of the county, maybe they asked for free kites for something. Whatever it is, you saw everything. I wanted you to see everything that came in. That being said, if it helps us with the mission, you just heard my budget message. We can't afford to keep doing all the things we're doing. We are going to have to shrink to what our role is as county government. And we have to make sure that our partners in the community can help carry that load, so.
Well, I feel like that just confuses me because I know we're wanting to partner, but I also think that
It's your decision to make.
yeah.
It's
Yep.
your decision to make. We'll propose ideas, and if you like it, you vote for it, and if you don't, you turn it down.
Yep.
That's the role.
Yeah, I think that the only other feedback I had is this conference is, you know, this is my second year, and we really are being influenced by a lot of different things. I understand that I just need to communicate this, but the assistant seems to be very close to the presenters and to that whole organization of WCA. And I just don't want there to be undue influence on my thinking when it comes to standing up for constituents in my district and for the county. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I want to make sure that my staff is connected with everybody throughout the state, whether it be legislators, whether it be senators, whether it be our counties association, whether it be federal agencies. When we have questions, we need to know who to call. We can't possibly know everything. So when you don't know something, you have to be able to call the person who does know the answer. Shared revenue was behind the scenes. We were very involved with that. So that connectivity, so that you know where some of these things are going, and that we can fight for some of the things that we need as a county. If we're not at the table, we lose. Winnebago County in the past, and this is not, I'm not trying to make offense, our executive office, when it was not at those tables, did not have those relationships, did not really, wasn't talking with other counties and collaborating. There's no reason for us to try to redefine a wheel if somebody has a wheel that's working. So no, I'm not concerned. As a matter of fact, that is the exact type of assistant that I would look for, somebody who's connected with the people who know the answers.
Quick.
Concern about that, though, is just that, really, that sometimes things can trip us up later with those, with that shared and partnership and all that. That's my concern, that's all. Thank you.
Supervisor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple notes and then a couple questions. First of all, I was surprised that you didn't have the chairmans in there, because I was honored last year to be in there twice. I didn't see many people arguing. We all had a good time, and we had a lot of good points. So I strongly say we should try to get back to that again. Second, and that 911 or 980, I had heard a rumor that we aren't going to build as many as we started out. Is that true?
We're going to build 3 and keep the 2-unit trailer.
Okay, so we're not gonna, wasn't it 5 or 8 that we, okay?
We wanted to do 8. They can't. The quote came in as $180,000 a piece, and I was not going to ask for another penny over the $1 million that we asked for. That was the hardest piece, hardest policy I ever had to push for, and I am unwilling to spend more than that on more. So we will make do with 3 extra units and the trailer that we have.
Because I know there was talk.
Yep. Yep.
Because there was talk that there might be quite a few more coming back that we might have to house, and I think they cut us back from what we originally set for, right?
Yep.
Okay, update again on the boathouse for the sheriff. How's that going?
Progress is good. It was not built to spec. I'm not happy about that. I'm looking for a letter either saying that if an issue happens because we didn't follow the design, that they will repair it at their cost going forward. If not, I'm going to make them tear it out and start over again. I'm not happy about it. So, sorry, Ralph, that's a touchy subject for me. It should be built, is what it should be. And if it's not operational by next spring, I'm going to really not be happy.
I hear you. How's the airport stuff coming there? How's that building going, you know?
Airport's doing great. I think all the leases have already been signed. That's going well. Yep.
And the only reason I ask is it was, I could be wrong, a couple months that we hadn't seen you or somebody filled in for you.
Yep.
But I think it's kind of important that we have updates, because for me, as a supervisor, you know, I guess I'm not into the click or wherever it's going on, and all of a sudden I hear something and go, I didn't know that, and I feel kind of stupid as a supervisor. I have no idea, and I would think, you know, if you can on your next agenda, make sure you bring that up for us, because updates are important, because I don't know about half of these things either. And the last one would be, I understand Adam's working with you now, or helping out in your office, right? Can you
Yep,
maybe
Adam-
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Adam Bellacarelli. Adam Bellacarelli came in to be our admin 4. So somebody who's very organized that can help us with the scheduling, help us with the communications, help us with emails to the board, help to schedule some of the meetings that we have coming in. Really to help us with that communication piece, which I think I've been struggling on. And when you have, you know, just the 2 people in the office, you drop a lot of balls. So hopefully you'll start seeing weekly updates again every Friday, the emails from the executive to help us put that together, let you guys know the good things that are going on through the county, some of the nice success stories we have. I'm looking to see if I can share an email we got from a county employee, but I need permission first. It's really a success story about how we did something in the county about benefits through veteran services that really is an amazing story, things that we should share, not only with you, but with all our county employees as well. So I think that's going well. His first week on the job was the PGI convention, so he got a lot of practice answering phone calls.
I bet you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the updates, and again, that's important that we have that, I feel.
Agreed.
So, okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bender.
I'd just like to say, I was actually very disappointed that the chairman didn't get to sit in on the budget. I mean, it's like, I like to have time to go over something, and now I'm gonna go to a committee meeting. That's the first time I'm gonna see this budget, is at the committee meeting. I have not seen one thing in that budget to this date. So I'm gonna show up there in an hour and a half, I'm supposed to digest the budget for 2024. I think that's sad that we didn't get that information earlier, that we couldn't sit in there. I sat in there with you last year. I didn't say a word. All I did is simply listen to it, and when I got out, I explained to Chris, this is the things that I would maybe like to see, and he could discuss them with you. And as far as the sheriff's evidence building, we budgeted that money in 2021. It takes 2 years to find a driveway? My God, that's just unbelievable. And we budgeted a little over $1.75 million in 2021. Do you think you're gonna build it for that today? Gonna be 3 years later. You know, I bet you that sheriff's evidence garage now is gonna be over $3 million. We budgeted the money in November for the highway department to get rid of the mold in the walls. How's that project coming? Could you give me an update on that?
This needs to stop. I am the Winnebago County Executive, you are Board Supervisors. We can respect each other a little bit more.
I'm just asking for an update, is that right?
I don't have an update for you,
Oh, I
but
didn't think
but
you
I
did.
will address the chairman. It is my call to propose the budget how I do, much like it is Chairman Egan's call to run this meeting as it is. And when my report is done, I am not allowed to speak to anybody. I'm not allowed to answer any of your questions. When you get to your budget deliberations and you want to have talks about amendments, I'm not allowed to speak on that. I'm not allowed to partake in that, and I respect that 100%. Morris, at your meeting, if you don't want to call on me, that is your right as the chairman of that committee. You do not have to allow me to speak in your committee. That is the power of the chairman of the committee. We all have roles and responsibilities. This is the way I decided to do this budget this year. We are
That's
going
fine.
to
It's
try
your
it with our
budget, and
team.
You do it the way you want.
Correct. Right.
I don't care. He's talking. Push your button, and if it's your turn, I'll call on you.
Right.
All I'm saying.
I'm sitting up here taking arrows. None of this stuff is on the agenda. I have to sit here, do my report, and answer whatever questions of the 36 you ask, and I try to do that the best I can. I try to give you the best information I can. If I don't know the answer, I'm not going to fake it. I try to ask department heads who have not prepared for the questions either. We're doing the best we can to answer you. Ralph, we tried to do our best to answer your email. Thank you for your email, and we will continue to do that. When you have questions, we will do the best that we can on this stuff.
But don't you say we work as a team? I'd like to be
Yes.
a part of your team. And in order to be a part of your team, I have to be there.
Okay, all right.
I want to be a part of your team, but I can't if I'm not involved.
I've got some lights that were up here. Supervisor Stafford, we're getting way out. We've got 7 more to go, so. Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll keep it brief. So, yeah, right. I was going to make a comment on the interaction of the board and the upfront part of the budget, but we belabored that. I would just say I understand where you're coming from. I get it. But there is an implication. And the negative implication is that this body is the one who approves the budget.
Yep.
This body can add amendments however we see fit during the budget process.
Yep.
We have, and I'm sure we will.
Yep.
If you don't allow times to come in and give people an opportunity to at least understand what's going on, there's a potential of, at budget, just blowing up and being extremely, extremely ineffective from a governance point of view. And that would be my only watch out there. Well, you know, like you said, do what you want, but this body is a stakeholder.
Yep.
And I've been through many budgets, billion-dollar budgets to a few dollars. And in every budget process, there's always been this conversation of who are the stakeholders and who do we have to make sure have an appreciation, understanding, and a say in the process. And that would be my concern. I mean, I could go back to KC when we were doing $1 billion. As a senior brand manager, I had board members in our budget process asking questions, very pointed questions.
Yep.
Right? And we didn't have to play nice, and they oftentimes didn't. So I do see the value in that, and I would hope that we would just consider those kinds of things going forward. And with that said, I understand the personalities, and I don't envy you. I would not want to do what you're doing. I just wouldn't.
Right.
But we also have to make sure that the process is one of efficiency.
Yep.
And I feel really uneasy about this budget for a variety of reasons, but that being one. And the other is, I think I heard something that you said. I'm not going to bring anything else up. But I wanted to just make sure I heard what I thought I heard. And it was news to me. It was with, I think it was Supervisor Dowling when she was asking about the signing of the resolution, right? you're not saying that you believe that the administration or the board is subservient to the administration, right? So this body is responsible for, it's co-equal in many ways, right? This body is responsible for setting direction of policy.
Yep.
And if the I still want to have this idea that the administration can pick and choose things that it wants. It doesn't work that way in any form of government. It doesn't work that way. So I would just caution with that. And I don't want to have a more conversation on that because it's 20 after 7. So I don't want to add to that. But I just think we need to rethink that point of view and have a better aligned point of view on that. So thank you.
You're welcome. And we can follow up at a later date. I think it's a great discussion.
Okay, we have 6 more. I think it's come pretty well to the conclusion of everyone in here that they would like to have gone ahead and have their people to come in, talk to you, the heads of them and whatever. I don't think we need to stress that anymore, but I'm not going to cut you off. He brought up about the budget, so I'm not going to cut anybody off, but if that's what you're going to tell them, I think we understand that. Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm asking this question, I hope I'm very brief, because constituents have asked me. We've brought up several times the $1.6 million in interest and growing regularly from the ARPA Spirit Fund. And can we be guaranteed that it will be awarded to current or to fund applications and not roll into either a general fund or some other, anybody's pet project? Will it be going to ARPA applications? Thank you.
That'll be this board's decision to make.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County Executive Damel, I'm going to ask these questions. I just want short answers. I'm not trying to belabor this point. Do you meet more than one time with department heads over discussing the budget?
Yes.
Is there a final meeting with the final budget proposal?
Yes.
Would it not be inclusive to include the chairman on that meeting?
Potentially, and I'm not saying this is the process I want to go going forward. We are trying to do a new budget process this year and trying to set up for priority-based budgeting to let people know that when we rate programs, we're going to have to figure out this year what we're mandated to do, what we're not, what's important by the board, and give you the opportunity to do that. And we're trying to set those things up. So I'm not saying this is the process going forward. This is just changing the philosophy. So I would consider it, but probably not, considering I think it's next Wednesday, and depending on our doctor appointment on Thursday, I might have a baby by Friday. So we want to make sure we get it dialed in.
Yeah, it was just my thought that if we were included in the final part of that process, we would be able to at least hear the things that were not carried forward and have an understanding why they weren't. So we would have that information. If our committee members asked us what was going on, we knew.
Yep.
And that's my thought with that. It's not trying to usurp any decision that you came. It's trying to find that common ground.
Our goal that we set out, I'm not sure, Mike, when we set that out, it was to go for individual budgets to committees in October, so you see it, so you have plenty of time to look at it, talk about it. As a group, you can make amendments if you want to. You can think about amendments. When you see something in there, if you want to make an amendment, absolutely, we will do our best, our ability to support, to write any resolutions that you need, to get you the numbers that you need to make the adjustments. I'm just trying to hand you something I think sets us up for the future, and then what you guys do with it on that point is completely up to this board.
Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I inform the Railroad Consortium that they're going to get that $5,000?
Yeah, Mike, you got a note on that? This is the first I've heard about it. I don't know if they've reached out to me, Paul. I don't know if they've reached out to you. No? So we'll look into it.
Supervisor Albrecht.
I'd like to inform the board that all opioid pills aren't bad. Under a doctor's prescription, they help a lot of people.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, I'm sorry if I might have missed this. Were you involved with any of the budget process up to this point? Or were you also cut out from all of this?
to this point, I just was in on the clerks because she sat in with me. I don't know who sat in on who, and to this, and just with the boards. That's all I was in on.
Okay.
Board budget, yep.
Okay. And then just a suggestion for everyone who's here to make this go a heck of a lot quicker. There should be a process where we actually communicate with our county executive before the county board meeting on a lot of these budget or any sort of project that we're working on, so that when we get to the floor here and we're not sitting here for an hour now harping on all these issues, that maybe he can come with all of our requests and say it at once so we don't have to sit here and harp on all these questions. So with that, obviously, John, I know you've been under a lot of fire with a lot of these projects. It's also on the supervisors to reach out and communicate and talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
County executives appointments.
Right. Dear members of the County Board of Supervisors, below are my appointments to boards and commissions. And you want me to do these one at a time? They're both in the same board?
Both same board. Do them both at the same time.
Okay. For the Fox Valley Workforce Development Board, at the request of the Fox Valley Workforce Development Board to comply with Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, I am reappointing Dale Walker, Director of Business of Industry Services, Fox Valley Technical College. And I'm also appointing Josh Kilgus, Vice President of Resource Development, United Way Fox Cities, both terms to expire in 2026.
Do we have a motion to approve? Second, it's on consent agenda too, but I was going down my agenda, so that's why they're on. I have a motion made in a second for the approval. We're going to do it this way because it's on the agenda on mine here. So we'll do it this way. Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried.
Thank you very much.
Now, if you don't ask me all them questions, I'll be all right. First thing is Supervisor Robinson is in the hospital at this time, so he is not here. Next thing is I did talk to our airport director, Jim, at the convention this weekend. He was down there manning one of the booths, and he will be at next week. I believe Supervisor Allenberger, I believe you plan on going next week to the aviation one in Appleton. It's tomorrow already? Okay. Well, next week, I guess I've lost it since I was there Sunday. So if anybody else, I don't know, Supervisor Gabbard can probably tell you about it too. If you want to go, let one of them know, and it's in Appleton. So, and then he can get, if you get they'll have to get a hold of him. So, and then of course, it just seems like every month it's been like we've got to have sad news here. This was Sheriff Motz had sent this, and dear Sheriff Motz, please accept this letter as my resignation from the Winnebago County Board, effective immediately. The late hour meetings and committee meetings that occur in daytime make it difficult for me to give my 110% to my employer, as well as being reliable supervisor to the individuals in Winnebago County. I've enjoyed the past 10 years on the Winnebago County Board. I had the pleasure of serving underneath Chairman Albrecht, Chairman Ramos, and Chairman Egan. Each of these individuals led the board with integrity. I'm grateful for those supervisors that I have served alongside for the entire 10 years. Supervisor Eisen, Supervisor Albrecht, Supervisor Gabbard, Vice Chairman Fari, and Chairman Egan. The patience, knowledge, and accepting me with open arms 10 years ago is appreciated. I have served on the Affirmative Action Commission, Human Service Board, and the Informative Systems Committee. The dedication and work ethic presented in the Winnebago County staff is impressive. My most enjoyable experience these past 10 years has been the time I spent on the Board of Health. Director Guerin and his staff give the exemplary service to Winnebago County. Their high standards are brought to everything they do. The citizens of Winnebago County are blessed to have the level of care and service. Respectfully, Rachel A. Youngquist. Received that on September 15th. So tomorrow we will be, tomorrow or the next day we'll be putting out for a new supervisor for that district, if any of you know or whatever, and we will try and fill that position. It's going to be hard. the vice chairman, I believe, which is Supervisor Harrison. You'll be taking over that meeting, and then there'll have to be elections for a chairman and that after that. So, and then they'll get to step right into the doing all the work that's coming up in October here. Okay, consent agenda. We got the approval of the proceedings from August 15th, adjourn the session from Winnebago County. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? Motion made and second for approval of consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Okay, so, let's see, number M, is it? M, resolution and ordinance. Resolution number 174-012023, authorizing a capital improvement project to provide automated pay stations for boat landings to be funded by transfer of $120,000 from the Spirit Fund. Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of Resolution 17401-2023.
Made and seconded by Supervisor Gordon. Supervisor Bain.
Yeah, I've had a little experience with some of these automated stations. We fish out of Sheboygan routinely, and so far it's been 100% failure. We'll go and you either can't continue with the charges as they expect. Sometimes the internet is not available. So then you decide, well, I'm going to launch my boat and go fishing, and when you come back, you have a ticket. And a lot of times the tickets are written about 2 seconds after you left, after showing obvious distress at the boat launch. And what a pain in the neck on your day off to have to deal with either the local police or the area where the site is located. And I wonder if this is going to be the same machine that they're using in the Sheboygan.
We'll have the director come up and explain it to you.
Which community was it again? Sorry.
Sheboygan.
Sheboygan. I'm not sure about Sheboygan. It's the same machine that's used in the city of Oshkosh and Brown County.
Okay. And is there a way to, I suppose it's too late to check and see if it's the same. I'm assuming that the internet connection is more reliable here than in Sheboygan?
I toured the one with the city of Oshkosh with their staff, and they have not had any issues to date. They said there's a few little glitches when you first set them up, of course, just like anything with some technology. One thing to keep in mind, unlike Brown County, for instance, who's having a little bit more issues, we're not going to print our stickers off of them for our yearly passes. Those there's still an online way to purchase those, so we're still going to do those to keep them as simple as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Supervisor Nelson.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that Winnie County put those pay stations in a year ago. Was a little bit struggle to get them going. I think they're on track for collecting almost twice as much in boat launch revenues as they were with the old envelopes. The labor and time spent for somebody to straighten out all the $1 bills, the fact that nobody has the right amount of change. My bait shop's pretty close by, and everybody's running there to get change for the boat launch was just a nightmare, and that is close and handy in the village where we've got police officers monitoring it. With some of the farther reaches of the county launches, I'm surprised that this wasn't done a few years ago, and we've had nothing but success. And the only complaint I've gotten at all is that when the sun's shining on it, it's a little bit hard to see, and there's a solar panel for power. You can't put a roof over top of it so that you can see better, but that is the only complaint that I've gotten from it.
If I can add one thing, none of ours will have the solar panels over them because it's just one other component that might go, might break, might be unreliable. So we're hardwiring all of them. That's part of the budget as well.
Supervisor Wise.
Yes, thank you. I have about 4 or 5 questions for you. Reading over the resolution, I have some question about lines 14, 17, and 18. In one part, it says that the money is coming from the Spirit Fund, and in, I think it's 17, 18, no, 14, it says that it's coming from the coming from the boat landing fees. I'm wondering which one it is on that, or is it a combination of the two?
The copy I'm looking at, and I just confirmed with Corp Counsel, only references the Spirit Fund. And the fiscal note as well mentions that the Spirit Fund will be reduced by $120,000.
Okay, thank you. Second one, the city of Oshkosh did this for 3 boat landings at a cost of $40,000. I know we're buying 7 automated pay stations, and for 7, I would think that there would be something less than $100,000. Is there a different vendor, or are we using something else?
It's actually the same vendor, and they actually have a state contract very recently with Wisconsin DNR. So it's actually even more competitive because it's already going out to bid. Part of the ask, so 20,000 of it, is to get some of the pay stations hardwired. So some of that is minimal amounts of concrete pads and the bollards to protect them. But then a lot of it is getting the infrastructure to them, so we try to make them as minimal maintenance headaches as possible.
Okay, thank you. Currently, Parks and Rec allows residents to buy tags online. Will this be dropped so that there's only one method?
We're still going to allow it online, so that way convenience of someone, if they want to just purchase it from their home and have it all done before they even go out there, there's still that option. And there's still the option to come into our office.
Okay, that's good. But online, the rules state that there's a 2.2% charge for using your credit card, but yet the yearly fee that we're paying to this vendor is $7,980. That just seems like that's a little out of balance, unless there's something more in that $7,980 that I don't know about.
Yeah, so that's the processing fee because a lot of it's the cellular fee for communicating, so that's included within the yearly maintenance. We do have plans to potentially increase the through the budget through the fees for the boat landings, just in general, to keep up with the repairs and maintenance of the whole boat landings, and that'll help cover some of that as well.
Okay. You went over who the manufacturer is. Is there a warranty with this equipment?
There is. There is a 2-year, I believe. I apologize. There's a 1 year, but then there's an option to extend it by 1 year next year, depending on how our first year goes. If we feel it'll be worth it to save on additional trips coming out, if they're going to be coming out for the initial setup.
Okay. Have we checked with any of the municipalities, other municipalities that are using this equipment, to see if there's any issues on it with this manufacturer?
Yep, so I mentioned the city of Oshkosh, Brown County, and then Dane County, and then the DNR as well. We've checked with.
Good, excellent. Last thing, knowing that the winters here are sometimes very brutal and could cause failure or maintenance issues not under warranty, the PNR's closing registration after October through April, which is probably the toughest part of the season weather-wise. Do we have anything here any reason to say that we might want to pull these units and put them in storage or put covers on them? The solar panel on the top, that looks very vulnerable to the high winds, which we know around any place around water is going to happen.
Yeah, so we won't have the solar panels because we're going to hardwire them. That's part of the budget.
Oh, okay,
but then a lot of the components on the inside, it's very basic on the inside of them. So we're going to cover them, but then we can also, if there's certain components that we want to pull in the winter, we can. So it's very easily to pull a lot of the components out, at least the ones that are the most vulnerable to the weather.
Okay, I had real questions about the solar panel on that.
Yeah, and then we don't have any, or we won't have any.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 quick questions. What is the lifespan of the pay station? And then also, what is your projected revenue yearly with this pay station?
So right now, we bring in about 120,000, just normally with our yearly and our daily fees. About 60,000, 70,000 roughly, off the top of my head, is daily. So as I mentioned, there may be a proposal coming to increase fees. Also, Brown County, there hasn't been enough data from them yet because they're about year 4, year 3. But they use them at their dog parks, their boat landings, and they have said, I know someone else mentioned it here as well, I think Winnebago, that because I want to know what my rangers are doing, so I go out and I collect the money as well. And you'll see in envelopes $5 because maybe they didn't have 7. You'll see, sometimes you'll see a 20 in there because they didn't have the correct amount. So what Brown County has found is that they are getting more. The amount more we're going to get from it, it's kind of hard to say until we really implement it. Because we do write tickets. Our ranger was out again today, and we do write tickets and reminders. So, I mean, there are people that aren't paying. There's still going to be people that try not to. But part of the goal of this as well, and I know it was mentioned earlier, is we spend about 2 or 3 hours just ripping envelopes, just checking cash, and we're going to be able to go to more landings and spend more time making sure that everyone is paying.
And what was the lifespan did you have?
The lifespan, everyone in the area hasn't really had them more than about 5 years. So at this point, the structure itself is a steel structure, so that's going to be fine. You're going to have to switch out some electronic components here and there. Cash box is pretty basic, so those won't have to be switched out for a while. It's going to be more the little modems and those types of things, but those are maintenance costs that we'll be able to absorb as it goes on. The structure itself, we shouldn't have to replace.
Thank you.
Supervisor Albrecht.
Do you receive any money for the boat, from the state for boat launch fees? And how much if you do?
You're wondering if we get any money from the state? The Parks Department does not. I know the Sheriff Department does for patrolling the water, but we do not receive any of those funds from the state.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and that's all the questions we have. This is a 2/3 majority vote on this, so we will be voting by our iPad, or by our, if you're in favor of Resolution 174, go ahead and vote A. If you're not in favor, vote nay. And that passes 33-1. Okay, resolution number 22905-2023, amend section 0.0, role of the County Board of Supervisors of the rule of the Winnebago County Board Supervisors to add section 0.4, addressing the use of Winnebago County-owned electronic devices by Winnebago County Supervisors and outlines consequences for misuse for such electronics. Now, I want you all to remember when we're voting on this as of today, not anything in the past or whatever. This is as of today. It'll be something new if it passes. Supervisor Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval, Resolution 229-05-2023.
And that is second by Supervisor Hanson. Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to refer my question to Chairman Stafford, Chairman of Judicial Committee. I've always been very concerned about making it mandatory for a supervisor running for county office to absolutely have to utilize electronic equipment. I consider that quite discriminatory, actually. When I look at the last page, you're familiar, that says draft. And I'm looking at number 12. So this initiative to amend the rules continues to indicate that it is the intent that electronic meeting packets will replace paper materials. Is that something you agree with, sir, Chairman?
Give me 1 second. I'm going to read the language that you're referring to.
done in what, 2014, that you wanted to add? This is not part of the resolution, this was just
That's
backup
what I,
material.
that's what I thought. So Corporation Council just reminded us that this was a draft from a previous resolution. This was not in the current resolution that was voted on. And to answer your question, no, go ahead.
Just hold on, one at a time.
It's proposed
Go ahead.
does not reflect that language.
No.
And then why is that included in the packet?
GPS did not include this, so that would not be a question for me. But I do want to answer your question, though.
Right.
And the short answer is, I absolutely would not agree with that statement. I think that we have to give different options for people to make sure that the work of this body is being consumed in an easy way, which includes, I think that if someone doesn't have the technology, absolutely should have the ability to get it in paper form.
If I can. Yeah, well, along with, you'll see Outagamie County's use policy, and then I believe it has Washington County use policy, Calumet County use policy, because, yeah, I know, but in order to get to that, the group that was putting this together wanted to show the entire board the breadth of their research. And again, and I know Supervisor Coran could correct me, but I believe that that last page that you're looking at, which is board rule, came from, what, almost 9 years ago? Is that correct? I don't know.
Yes, that's correct. This was through the IT department in 2014 that this last page came out.
But what?
Oh, it was proposed at IT, it never came to the county board.
And
It's only defeated. That
That's all
was
it
never, ever
No.
done. So we're being assured that is not part of the resolution or supporting documents for the resolution, just for clarity.
Correct. The
thank you.
resolution is 3 pages.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other questions. This also passes by, or I should say not passes, but it's got to be voted on and 2/3 in order to, oops, I'm sorry. Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be voting against this. Since February, we've had an awful lot of talk about the morality of use of the county iPads, and there are a lot of other issues that one might fall under morality issues. Drunk driving. I mean, I could ask the sheriff how many drinks I can have before I could really get behind a car. I'm not going to ask him because we're not going to ask questions. What about a supervisor who's a wife beater? What about a supervisor who's a child abuser? Going for green people who say, oh, I don't like supervisors using single-use water bottles, or the fat man who sits next to me in one of the Winnebago County, in the Wisconsin County Association meetings from another county using an iPad just like ours, huge guy scrolling for 2 hours on fast food websites. Someone would say, well, that's pretty immoral. How many divorces can we have before it's considered immoral? What about an abortion? Can we have an abortion and not have anybody say, well, this is pretty, this is immoral? Supervisor Sestera warned us against constitutional rights being eroded, and I think that deciding what issues which ditch we're going to die in over morality is going to nullify or overturn the constitutional democratic vote of the people. If people don't like what someone has done, let them vote their own supervisor out, or let them have a recall election. But this is overreaching. Thank you.
Supervisor Bender.
I too will be voting against it, and my reason is I would like it just to be elected official. I think we should have one document that Infosystems handles for everybody, the sheriff, the county exec. Anybody that's elected should sign the same piece of paper. It shouldn't be county board supervisor. Nobody's going to write one for the sheriff. We're going to write one for the treasurer. Why can't we have one standard document? If you're elected, you should all be held to the same standard.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to sound off here and say that this isn't about the morality of what conduct is done. It is that the conduct is done on county-issued property. And when at the end of the day, you are accountable to, yes, your constituents, but you're also accountable to everyone else in the county if that device was issued to you from the county. So ultimately, I will be supporting this. I think this is a common sense rule that I think needed to be put in place much sooner. And going forward, I think this will just help clarify, going forward, obviously, what we can and cannot do with our devices. Thank you.
Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to remind the board two things. The first is that the IT department has been looking for a policy like this to clarify since 2014. We haven't acted on that, and this is the opportunity to do so. This is going to be it's supposed to be more narrow than people assume. The point is that if you are running for county office, specifically county board supervisor, you should be able to hold yourself to a higher standard on county property and county issued property. That is all this resolution is explaining and going over. So if you believe you can do that, you should have no problem with this. Thank you.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this actually came up in JPS, and I will be supporting it because this doesn't impede someone's ability to express their opinion or whatever they want to express. That doesn't change anything. This is about doing it on government property. It is the county's property, not the person's. And I think that the county has every right to ensure that their property is being utilized effectively and to mitigate any potential issues that the county might be held accountable for in the misuse of the devices. And I think that's one of the reasons why IT or IS has been pushing for this, because there is liability. County has deep pockets. That's where people go. And so I think we have to be aware of that reality. But this doesn't really impact someone's ability to express themselves freely. In fact, I think this board does a great job of expressing themselves. So thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisors Gustafson, Flom, and Stafford really already said it. It's really about what you do with a county piece of property, not what you do privately. I will be voting in favor.
Supervisor Ponser.
Yes, I just have one question. Maybe 2 months ago, we were at a Parkview committee and we were hacked during the meeting. What happens if somebody hacks into my program and somebody says, hey, Ponser's doing this, and I had nothing to do with it? That's my only worry.
Supervisor Ernst.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the other members of the IT committee for bringing this forth. I do think that although this resolution is not necessary in order to resolve any sort of moral or ethical crisis, it is done for to provide guidance to the IT department. And if you look at the supporting documents, like this is one of the thickest packets I've seen in my time here. We clearly see that the recommendations are in line with surrounding counties and other counties in the state. I will be supporting this resolution. I think if there was any serious risk of erosion of rights or anything like that, we would have seen it already because many other counties in the state are doing it. Thank you.
Supervisor Hens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to briefly touch on the hacking part. That's Zoom that's getting hacked. That's the website. That's not the actual hardware that's getting hacked into. And that has happened to pretty much every committee, I believe. I think every chairman here would probably nod. They've seen the guy come on. But I will be supporting this, again, because for the reasons that have been stated. This isn't infringing on anybody's right. This is saying what you can do with our property. That's like saying you can't drive around naked in a county truck.
Supervisor Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll probably end up supporting this, but I understand what the folks are saying here about that it does not to cover all the other Winnebago County employees. And yeah, I follow that, but I think maybe it has to start with us first. Start with us first and show that we are able to address this issue and put rules and regulations on ourselves first, and maybe then it will give some teeth to it for the IT committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now, this here will, like I started saying, this here will take 2/3 of the membership in order to pass. So if you're in favor of the Resolution 22905 2023, vote. Bring it up. Vote A. If you're not, vote nay. And that passes 26-7. All right. Now, Justin Fisher would like to come forward here. The next thing on is resolution 26609-2023, resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $9,900,000 and authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligations promissory notes. That should be Supervisor Cox, I do believe.
I'd like to make a motion. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we accept Resolution 26609-2023.
And that
The
is
resolu- the
that is seconded
resolution-
by Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you. Don.
Supervisor Cox, did you have discussion or something you wanted to say on it?
I think we'd like to have Justin come forward and make a few comments with regard to the bonding and the levy amounts that we'll be left with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. It's so wonderful to see everyone, so many familiar faces. It's that time of the year where we're looking at reimbursing the county for capital projects that you've already spent or are about to spend over the remaining course of the year. So I handed out a presentation that I'll run through real quick. This is what we went through. We went through a few financing options with Finance Committee, and ultimately this is what was approved. And so I'll go through those details tonight. So the first thing, if you look at page 2, that's a kind of an interest rate update. It's really to show you a historical perspective over the last 30 years, what interest rates have done. You know, historically speaking, interest rates were higher than they have been over the last several years. You know, we've kind of gone up and normalized from where they have been historically. And you know, what's going to happen in the future, that's anyone's guess. But, you know, what we're hearing is that the Fed may do one more rate increase. They're kind of, it's economic dependent right now. And that may not happen. They're actually making a decision this week. But, you know, the thought is that they won't increase potentially this go around and may do it one more time by the end of the year. How that affects you on this type of financing, it doesn't have a huge effect because that's short-term financing that ultimately that impacts, which is good in the aspect of what you can invest in and earn on your short-term investments. And on the long-term basis, you know, interest rates are still holding in there for 10-year type financing that we're looking at doing over the next month. So that's kind of a quick interest rate update. If we go to page 3 of the presentation, this is the financing illustration. So there's a lot of numbers on this page. You guys see it every year that I come here and present. But on the left side of the page, I'll kind of walk through it. Left side of the page, that's your actual debt service on an annual basis. So that's what's outstanding between all your outstanding debt issues on an annual basis. So you can see what the actual levy is. and then how it drops. And that drop is strategic, knowing that you have to fund capital projects year over year. Because again, like was stated earlier, we looked at over the last several years of reducing that fund balance, reducing borrowing, paying off existing debt. But at the same point, we knew that capital projects are going to continue. You need to continue to invest in the community. And so we have done it pretty strategically in that we want to continue down the path of having a debt service mill rate reduction year over year, which is what we've been doing over the last several years. And that's the goal this year, again, is to have a 2-cent reduction to the debt service mill rate. So that's kind of the highlight here. We factored in hypothetical future borrowings of about $10 million going forward, just for projection purposes, to kind of see how things look potentially in the future. And honestly, you're set up very nicely. The county's finances are in good shape. You always do a great job. You continue down a path of being very prudent in how you spend your money. And I think this overall plan is a model for many community or for counties across the state of Wisconsin. So that's page 3. And then let's go to page 4 of the presentation. So the amount is a not to exceed amount of $9,900,000. This is going to be a general obligation promissory note. It's to fund the capital projects approved by the county board in the budget, and it's going to be a 10-year repayment. It'll be callable on 2030 or any date thereafter, so on that particular day you can refinance it, pay it off, etc. And then the timeline here, Personnel and Finance approved the financing on September 7th. The county board considering it tonight and adopts the initial borrowing resolution, and then I will be back on October 17th to present the final bond sale result, and then ultimately closing November 9th of 2023. So if there are any questions, I'd be glad to entertain them.
Vice Chairman Fari.
I'm not sure if the question should go to him. Perhaps Chairman of P&F could answer my question?
Yes.
Included on line 10, it indicates that we need to borrow money for projects at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Fox Cities campuses. We have approved no resolutions supporting projects at that campus. Why is that included in this bonding?
Did we? We. Mr. Fari, just to answer your question, we did approve projects in the past with regard to the windows in the Fox, or in Oshkosh Fox Cities campus.
I certainly respect your thoughts on that. Was it just the windows we did? Because of the issue about a kitchen.
I'm hearing from Steve Bender that we also approved the planetarium project. And that was also added into the group of approved projects that we figured this percentage out on.
That's right. I just needed that clarification. Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not sure who to direct this question to. Admittedly, I am a little naive on this one. I'm a little uneasy. I also go to line 10, especially when it talks to acquiring land. If there are capital improvement projects, please help me understand right now. The reason I asked what the balances in the Spirit Fund were of $20.5 million and $1.6 million is, instead of some other pet projects that we may have, why isn't Spirit Fund money being utilized for those projects rather than bonding out and borrowing money and putting a tax burden when money is already in the bank? Submit an application through ARPA on a capital improvement. That's what the money's for, at least in my opinion.
I mean, My opinion, that's up to the board to decide to use a spirit fund. Basically, I talked in the P&F committee with Supervisor Cox on the county should borrow every year to maintain our credit rating. We need to maintain the credit rating, and Justin has put together a schedule for the last several years regarding borrowing. Right now, basically, we're borrowing at a lesser interest rate than we are investing our money at. So the money is in the bank, it's making interest. The borrowing rate is going to be less because it's a long-term rate. So if that is the choice of the board to not want to borrow, that would not be my recommendation, and that is not Justin's recommendation. Because if you don't borrow, the mill rate goes down substantially, and then the next year is going to go up substantially, and you're not going to keep it on this steady decline like we've been trying to do for the last several years, or Justin has been recommending.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Justin, thanks for your presentation. I always look forward to this. And Paul, thank you for clarifying why we borrow. My caveat on this 9.9 million might not be a lot to other people, but it's a lot to me to sit here tonight and make this decision. I was hoping we could get a list of what makes up that 9.9. Is that not allowed for the county board to see that list? I trust you have one.
That list goes back to what was approved in the resolution for the CIP projects back in March.
So you don't,
I have one, I don't have it with me.
but we could get it,
Here it is.
which I wish we had.
Yeah.
You can't?
No, I don't have my glasses.
Does Mary Ann have
I
it?
can read it. I'm looking at Resolution 194-022023, which was approval of capital improvement projects for 2023. Can you hold this so I can move this, because I can't just move this. Sorry. The list, let me just look at this. Okay, there are 23 items in this list. So one is design of taxiway reconstruction. 2, replacement of a plow truck at the airport, county funding of $140,000. 3, courthouse 4th floor ceiling repairs, county funding $155,000. Number 4, design and engineering for boiler replacement at the Coughlin Center, with county funding of $10,000. 5, installation of fall protection measures at the courthouse. 6, masonry maintenance projects. 7, boiler replacement at the Nina Human Services. 8, Parkview Health Center fire alarm replacement. 9, roof replacement with county funding $275,000. County F, County Highway F, Omro to County Highway D with county funding of $1,626,818. County Highway JJ, that's county funding of $929,000. Maybe you don't need the numbers. County Highway P, Highway Department office and shop renovation and repair. County Highway II, number 15 is repair and improvement of the Walcott Creek Dam. 16, wiring and cameras at the jail. 17, dispatch console workstation replacement. 18, UWO Fox Cities Barlow Planetarium updates. 19, UWO Fox Cities food service and union facilities. 20, UWO Fox Cities HVAC controls replacement. 21, UWO Fox Cities library roof replacement. 22, UWO Fox Cities replacement of science wing windows. Then 23, installation of redundant fiber loop. So anyway, that's listed in Resolution 194-022023.
Can you go back to UW Fox
Sure.
on the kitchen?
Okay, so there were, 18 was the UWO Fox City Barlow Planetarium. 19, UWO Fox Cities Food Service and Union Facilities with county funding of $2,209,000.
That one got taken off. That one got pulled.
That got, okay. I'm reading the agenda.
I know you're
That's-
reading
I'm just
that,
reading
not
it
the
right
signed
from the, okay, so there was that. Then the next one was UWO Fox Cities HVAC controls. Should I give you the numbers or no?
Yep, that's
Okay.
fine. You mentioned the one that I thought had been pulled.
Okay.
So thank you for that information.
No, that's fine.
Appreciate it.
This problem.
Supervisor Bender.
I'd just like to say that right now, we're getting about 5.25% on our money. If we borrow this money, they're projected to come in at 4%. So even if we would take $10 million out of the Spirit Fund and transfer that into our reserve fund and use this money, we're gonna make $125,000 for the taxpayers to spend on something else. Because we're gonna borrow the money at 4% rather than take the money out of the bank at 5.25%. So if we want to basically not utilize the money and make $125,000 for the taxpayers, if it was my money, I know what I would do. I would take the $125,000 and borrow the $9.9 million.
Supervisor Stura.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, question for Mr. Kaiser, if I can. If we didn't have debt, but we went and wanted to borrow later, rather than the argument of having a yearly loan that will keep our credit rating up, we would be lent that money in a heartbeat, wouldn't we? If we had debt to asset ratio, or debts to asset ratios were way up, I mean, I don't understand why we have to have debt in order to have credit rating.
I'm going to let the debt expert answer
right.
that one.
All right.
We do not have to have debt to have the bond credit rating stand the way it is. The strategy behind doing the annual borrowing is because when we talk with Paul and the budget planning and so forth, it's in the CIP, the long-term five-year CIP, that you're going to be borrowing around $10 million annually.
Okay.
If that were to go away, the strategy would change and how we would go about funding this long-term plan.
And our total finance charge over the 10 years, is that like 31 million? Is that, am I reading that correctly?
The 31 million?
That's the total.
Page 3,
Yes, so
Debt
that's the
service?
principal and interest on an annual basis. If you total that up, what's outstanding, it's,
what would the interest only be, the total finance charge be for 10 years?
Are you talking about the 9.9 million only, or all of the other outstanding debt that we have?
I'm not worried about the 9.9. I mean, I'm not, so it'd be 31 million minus 9.9? So it'd be like 21 million in finance charge?
no, I would need to take a look at what is outstanding on a principal basis to
Because that's always
calculate
a big question for me if I borrow money, like, what's the total finance charge?
Yeah, and, I would say historically, it wasn't too long ago where we were borrowing at, just above 1%, in 2020 and 2021. So there is some very low outstanding debt, out there. But at the same point, there is going to be interest cost, absolutely, every time you borrow.
Yeah, I'd like to get that information before I could vote on
We
it.
can, absolutely.
Is it the 1.39?
The 1.39.
Just the total finance charge,
I don't have it listed on here.
what is it, where is it?
The 1. Yeah, that's just for the 9.9 million. Yes, so that's what that 1.39 million is related to.
Per year?
That's the total. The annual, you can see what that interest
After
annual
10
amount-
years? After the
Yes,
10 years?
After the 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to Supervisor Gabbert's idea of receiving a list of the projects that will be borrowed for. So my question is for Director Kaiser. What was read to us from Resolution 194 was what we approved as part of the CIP budget. We also know that there are projects that were budgeted in 2017 that were just finished this year. A road project comes to mind that we just had a resolution for last month. And when we pass resolutions, they are passed as to be paid for from the general fund or advanced.
No advance.
Well, there's a decision to be made
It's
about.
unassigned general fund or borrowing, and there is no advancing. That
Okay.
is improper language that has been changed.
Okay, so when we pass those resolutions, though, we don't know where you'll decide to take the funds from, if it will be from the general fund or borrowing. We give you that option. So can we, when the borrowing is decided, receive a list of exactly the projects, not just the projects that were borrowed for in this package?
There is a list that makes up to 9.9 million that I thought was in the packet, which I should have looked or brought a copy with me, but it's not in there. So it's up to 9.9. It
Yes.
doesn't mean we're going to borrow 9.9. That's a decision that still has yet to become, and that list can be given to the board of the borrowing.
Okay, thank you. I understand that it's up to 9.9, and it may not be that amount at the end of the day, but just the list would be helpful, just so we're aware, and we can all be on the same page as to what exactly we're borrowing for in this package. Thank you.
Supervisor Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, one more time, I'm sorry to harp on this point. How much was allocated, or is going to be allocated towards the food services at UW Fox Cities? What was that amount?
Zero. The 2.2 million was pulled in the CIP.
Okay, and that's not included anywhere in this?
That's nowhere. That
Okay.
has not been approved by the board, so we cannot borrow for it.
Perfect. And then I just noticed from the PNF agenda that the discussion point was not exceeding 9 million, and we're bringing up to 9.9 in this resolution, so,
It was amended.
okay.
9.9 to cover all of our needs because of the interest rate being so low at this point. To go back, it would increase the interest rate.
Supervisor Cox, you're going to have to push your button. We can't hear you when you talk.
While we were deliberating at PNF, we decided to go with 9.9 rather than the 9, in that the interest rate was low enough now that if we waited, with the point or two that the Fed might add to the interest rates in coming months, we would end up paying more. So if we ended up with the lower amount against what we could end up with a higher amount, the difference, or the difference between the two, is the 125,000 Steve mentioned.
To answer your question?
Just want to follow up, just make sure it's clear. So we're borrowing money for projects that we haven't approved or anything like that? We're just borrowing this money and sitting on it, just for the intent of potentially using it?
All of these projects have been approved by the board. So I will get the list out to the board. I'll send you the list that includes the 9.9. It's all the projects that were listed. It's 2 or 3 projects that were approved by the board from March until today, but every single project that makes up to 9.9 has been approved by the board.
Gotcha, thank you.
Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for you, Director Kaiser. In regards to the mill rates, in terms of our mill rate in this county, where do we sit in terms of counties around us in northeast Wisconsin and statewide? Do you have an idea of where we sit in that? Is our mill rate higher than average, or around the average, or lower than average?
I assume it's lower, but I do not have that information off the top of my head.
Okay, that's fine. And then the next one would be, do you know, as of today, the county's credit rating?
Our credit rating?
Our credit rating. It says on the back here, on page 4, credit rating from Moody's. Do we know what that is currently?
AA1.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, this is probably for you, directed to you. I see that in order to pass this, we need three-fourths of membership on that. My question is, if this is defeated today, do we have to wait another year to consider it?
I'm going to look at Jeff there, see what he says. For this credit rating, I would say, but, or for the rating.
I've never had one be defeated, but I think we would be able to still bring it back with a different borrowing amount if you so choose.
So by bringing it back with a different borrowing amount, that would negate the fact that we're actually just doing it over again?
Right, to not get the interest rate, maybe.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure everybody knows that we're in a unique position right now where we can make more money on interest than we are spending. So this is a good deal.
Supervisor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick questions. Do we have any other debt besides what we're doing now?
Yes.
How much do we have now?
Yes, and total principal and interest combined is that $31,252,000 that's out there on the
It's out
left
there
side
now,
of the page.
right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's out
The
there.
next question is 9.9 for these projects, and we know that none of the projects stay at the figure they are because everything costs more. So what happens when you okay this, to put the money into our fund, and it takes a couple of years or a year and a half to get all these done, and it's gonna cost us $2 or $3 more million?
Well, that is something I have discussed with PNF and several other supervisors on trying to improve that capital improvement process. So this year, we are going to look at all of the projects and come up with new estimates of what they will be, to bring them to the board, to let them know what the potential could be for overruns. But we're implementing a new process to try to get ahead of anything that might be a surprise, to not be a surprise to the board. But that process has just started, like, since we had the highway project come in way over budget. So costs keep going up. We're going to do our best to come up with new estimates to let the board know what they are.
Okay, and the last question is, you talk about the highway one, but if I remember right, the highway one went over budget, so somehow we found other areas in our budget that we had money sitting there that we took away from some monies that we didn't spend, and we put it toward that, right?
We borrowed for the projects, and the highway project went over. There were 2 facilities projects that were under, and then there was another, I forgot the third project. But yes, they were all projects that were borrowed against, so we're able to use them funds to pay for the highway.
Okay, so there's no rule that any of this extra money, and we allocated it for certain things, but you can take it from other places to pay something like this?
Only with board approval.
Okay.
So we have to bring that. The thing is, if they're all borrowed against, you have to use it against another project that was borrowed against. I can't use a project that wasn't borrowed that came in under, that goes back to the unassigned general fund. So when we borrow against them, they go into the capital improvement project fund, and we have to match them up. So it might look like robbing Paul to pay Peter, but we're trying to reconcile what we are bonding.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul, I need a little clarification on what has been said. Administration requested a bonding for $9 million, correct? Originally.
The original resolution was written for $9 million, correct?
And then the committee amended that and added on $900,000.
The original resolution was written with projects that were up to $9 million. We put together a scenario of borrowing $7 million, $8 million, or $9 million with the possibility of up to. It's up to, it's not going to be what we're always going to borrow. It's going to be looking at the projects. And then after the resolution was written, me and Director Collard discussed it, and we added a project for highway. We added, not for highway, but for airport and Parkview. We put their projects on the list, which then brought it up to 9.9 million. And then we gave that, both of them documents, project list totaling 9 million, project list totaling 9.9 to the P&F committee, and they made a decision to amend it up to 9.9.
But you also said this bonding is for projects that have been approved by the board. So my conflict is, if you come in with 9 million, those are approved projects, and we add 900,000 onto that, that means you were either underfunding the approved projects, or you're adding 900,000 in anticipation of a approved project?
All of these projects have been approved.
So
The
the
ones that
original
I did
9
not
million.
include were
Oh.
the enterprise funds.
Okay, so
I did
what you
not
were doing
include
there,
airport, I did not include Parkview, I did not include, I can't think of, solid waste. Well, solid waste does their own thing. So it was Parkview and airport.
so
They-
in other
I
words, you
added
were
900 for
you were
them.
gonna fund them using the fund balance to supplement the bond, and you decided not to do that.
I was under the
Is
assumption.
that the bottom line here?
I was under the assumption that we should not include the enterprise funds in our borrowing. After discussions with Director Collard, he said we can borrow for them. So I changed the form and gave that to P&F to make the decision on what they wanted to borrow against.
Okay, otherwise you would have used the fund balance to cover that,
Yes.
correct? Okay, I get the picture now. Very good, thank you.
Not seeing any other lights. This will go ahead and we will need 3/4 of the membership for resolution number 26609-2023, authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $9,900,000, authorizing issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes. So if you're in favor of it, vote A. If you're not in favor of it, vote nay. And that passes 3-4. 30-4, I'm sorry. Next is Resolution 26709-2023. Approve the Land and Water Conservation Department Spirit Fund Program Policy Plan. Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is with great pleasure that I bring forward the Spirit Fund Program Policy Plan. So let me move to approve Resolution 26709-2023.
And that is seconded by Supervisor Gordon.
Mr. Chairman, a few comments, if I
Don't
might.
forget to use your buttons if you want to second or make motions. Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you. As I said, it's with great pleasure. I want to take a minute to offer a few things, if I might. Okay, thank you. You want me to repeat that? It is with great pleasure I bring this forward. I want to take a minute to offer a few thank yous. First of all, to the Director, Chad Casper of the Land Conservation Department, and his staff. They worked with us very closely to develop the policy you have before you. In addition, working with the committee has been just spectacular, a great pleasure, a lot of input and comments before we unanimously reached the policy you have before you. I also want to take a minute to thank two of our non-board members, citizen members, that would be Bruce Bone and Dan Stokes. As you know or might know, they farm for a living, and they contributed a great deal of help and comments in developing the document before you. Certainly, we have a director, Chad is with us tonight, if you have any specific questions to the policy, but I would hope you all agree that it is a very well-drafted, fair, equal document. Thank you.
Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Supervisor Fari, for working hard on this. I stated this many times in the ARPA Commission. This might be one of the most important things that we do as far as legacy in our county. We are so blessed to have the most water per capita in the state of Wisconsin, and protecting that natural resource, should be important to everybody in this room. 100% in support of this. I just want to ask the director if in part of this plan, and you heard the gentleman in the back, this is something that has been affecting my district, for many years, and I know you're aware of it, but is this something in the land and conservation plan here that could be utilized to mitigate the risk of the constituents that I represented, their flooding houses out there on County Road E?
Yeah, so a lot of the practices we do are, we have to tie everything back to a water quality benefit. So by default, a lot of our practices are gonna help drainage. So we do a lot of what's called grass waterways, where if we're getting, for example, gully in an egg field, we'll go in, we'll size it according to the watershed and the water coming through it. We put permanent vegetation in that so it doesn't gully anymore, and then it can handle the water coming through the farm field. So that would be one example. We also do wetland restorations that retain water and help with flooding. So those types of examples would help some of this. Now, we're not necessarily going to do like a road ditch in those type of drainage situations, but when it's on ag land, we would do those types of practices.
Some drain tile, and that's something that's been proposed, that doing drain tile across the farmland, that would be included in this plan?
The only time we would cost share drain tile is if we're doing a waterway and there's a base flow that the waterway, we don't want that water sitting in the waterway. We'll put tile on the tops of the waterway on each side to handle some of that saturation, but we are not going to cost share putting tile in ag land. We don't cost share that. We actually cost share to break the tile where they've tiled areas that were historically wetlands to restore it back to wetlands. We'll take the tile out in those scenarios.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor Haran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add on to what Supervisor Buck said. This is a legacy program. We're talking about clean water for years. I want to also thank the staff of Land and Water, because we had pictures as we were going. Excuse me, what a pleasure it is to be on this committee. It is wonderful. Our farmers are so informative in what goes on. But as I look at these pictures and I see with the, the rock walls that are up, and you start to see the marshland that's behind it, and you say, how long did that take for that marshland to start building up?
The example that was included in your packets, we did aquatic plant survey last year and this year, and you can see the aquatic plant response. That was a typical break wall that we do through our office, and it was pretty eye-opening to see. I think the picture speaks for itself as far as the plant response in a short amount of time.
And the last thing I would like to say is that we worked on this for 4 to 5 months to make sure that when it came before the board, it was done correctly. Thank you so much.
And again, I can't thank my staff enough. I couldn't do it without them behind the scenes doing it and the input of the committee as well. So I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Way to go.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm almost forgetting something here. It was brought to my attention by Corp Counsel. I need to offer a friendly amendment on line 17. and this is for clarification. I'll read the, let me start on line 16. Whereas the LCC, that's the committee, may amend the Spirit Fund policy specific to conservation practices if needed. Cost share percentages may only be amended by the county board. We need to clarify that by adding these words after the word percentage, utilizing Spirit funds. So it would read, cost-sharing percentages utilizing Spirit funds may only be amended by the county board. Explanation, many of our projects receive a 70% cost-sharing, and that money comes from either county funds or state funds. What we're doing is we're adding an additional 20% onto the 70% to achieve the 90% goal of enhancing conservation practices. And I really appreciate Mary Ann's attentive to this and adding those words, because if we're going to change that extra 20%, the feeling of the committee is it needs to be done by the board. So I offer that as a friendly amendment.
There is no such thing as a friendly amendment, believe it
Okay,
or
I
not.
offer that as an amendment.
Motion made and seconded for the amendment. Supervisor Nelson on the amendment? No. Okay. Okay, we don't see anything on the, I don't have any on, do you? On the amendment? Do you have it, what it's supposed to say? Right.
So for the amendment on line 17, or I'll start up with line 16. It should say, whereas the LCC may amend the SFP policy plan specific to conservation practices if needed, cost-sharing percentages utilizing Spirit funds may only be amended by the county board.
Not seeing any other lights. All those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now back on the original motion, Supervisor Nelson.
Yeah, I just wanted to add the picture on page 1 there is just north of the village of Winnie County, just north of the Winnie County Bridge. It's close enough that people can see it when they go across the highway there. And of course, I see it every day, and what that has done in just a year's time is remarkable. So just want to go along with the rest of the committee. I think it's I didn't know what I was getting into when I got on the Land Conservation Committee. I'm very pleased with what they're doing, and those break walls are something that's been needed for years on that system.
If I could just add to that, Mr. Chairman. So one thing with these funds, what we plan to do within the department, because this would be considered local money, it would really leverage other funds when we apply for grants as in-kind match. So those break walls are expensive, and I have one in the works right now, and my plan is to leverage grant money to pay for probably 50% of it, and then use some of the Spirit Fund program to back up the difference, and we get awarded more points on those grant applications by doing that. So it'll make our money go a little further with the program.
All those in favor of resolution number 26709, 2023, as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Nay. One nay. Ordinance number 26809, 2023, amend Winnebago County General Code Section 1.12 to adopt a compensation package to pay Winnebago County Board of Supervisors a monthly salary. Supervisor Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, I would like to bring forward to the floor ordinance number 268092023.
Second. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And it was seconded. Discussion. Supervisor Ernst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just, if there is to be discussion on this motion from us supervisors, I would just encourage us to remember that we had a very lengthy discussion about this topic at the special orders meeting. So if you wanted to speak, and we're just going to kind of repeat yourself, I would encourage you just to remind us, summarize what you said at the last meeting. We've already lost a supervisor today because of the amount of time people take speaking at times during these meetings. So out of respect for the process, let's move forward. Thank you.
I see no other lights. So, yes, sir. Yes.
Mike on? Thank you. Once again, I do have an amendment that I would like to make on this. The current ordinance is an amendment to the current code section and not a replacement of the current code section. Mary Miller has pointed out to that end, I suggest we make an amendment on the floor of line 20 of the ordinance and remove the language that says replaced in its entirety with the following language. Remove that and replace it with language amended as follows.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All's in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. 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 Back to the original resolution as amended. Ordinance number 26809, 2023, as amended. Supervisor Dowling.
Just to request a roll call vote.
Okay, not seeing anything else? Okay, we'll do roll call. Just hold on, Julie. You were faster this week in getting
I
around
know.
than you.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, if you're in favor, vote A. If you're not, vote nay.
Oh, she's not there.
Is this Tara left?
There we go.
And that passes 28-5. You can clap or do whatever you want. Number 6, Resolution 26909, 2023, amend Section 8.0, written agenda of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to introduce Resolution 26909, 2023.
That was seconded by Supervisor Gustafson. Any discussion? Supervisor Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm just a little confused about what this resolution is trying to accomplish. Is there anyone who can clear that up for me?
We'll call on Supervisor Hanson. He's the author.
Yes, thank you for the question. Supervisor Nichols, what this is several people, including supervisors, have reached out to me because if you go look on the website, not all exhibits or resolutions are displayed. So this is to increase engagement of community and supervisors so that, say, you want to look at the agenda for something at Judiciary and Public Safety. You can see the resolution that's being discussed in that committee. That doesn't always happen, unfortunately. Not at JPS, I apologize, in other committees, commissions, and boards. So this is just to increase transparency and engage communication and dialogue.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Oh, Supervisor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hanson, in some way, this skirts around the idea that committees have a check and balance on resolutions that are made public, as well as agendas that are made public. That information, as it is presented, is usually presented when the agenda is given to the committees a week before the committees, have their meeting. I believe that there's a work in process issue here, that some of this hasn't even made it to a committee. Some of the resolutions or some of the budget transfers, whatever, including the agenda, that's not been approved, so it needs to be, and if it needed to be amended, you're not getting firsthand information. You're really getting information that is draft information. So I think this either needs to be amended, this resolution needs to be amended, so that you're able to get firsthand or completed and voted by either agenda or by resolution, at least voted by one committee to bring it to a public stance. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do follow what you're saying. May I address that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, being that you're the author.
I don't believe this skirts anything. All this does is if there is an item on the agenda, it needs to be given to the county clerk's office in the proper time that it's supposed to be given, and then on display through the website. That's all that this is saying. It's not drafting, it's not changing anything. It just says if it's on the agenda at a committee, commission, board, or I'm leaving one out, I apologize, or panel, or task force, it's on the website for everyone to see. It's not skirting anything. It's just saying it's there for the public to see.
Supervisor Eisen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 269-09-2023 seeks to apply the same standard for informing supervisors and the public in preparation for a county board meeting to each and every one of our 33 committees, commissions, boards, panels, and task forces. This is the package that we have for the county board. I suggest this resolution is micromanaging to its utmost. Could you just imagine being unable to present a document to your committee just because you didn't send it out to everyone the week before? How will you ever get anything done? Please accept my tribal wisdom and defeat this resolution before the rule defeats you.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really torn. I think there's some really valuable merits to this. I know I found myself in the situation of trying to find more information about items in a committee meeting, and sometimes the agenda is available, but the supporting documents are not, and that makes it difficult to track what's going on, especially ahead of time. So I really do appreciate how this is brought forward. I share Supervisor Eisen's concern that applying the agenda rule 8.3 specifically requiring 7 days ahead of time for all of these different things, might feel a little cumbersome. And I think about the timing and the cadence of some of our committee and commission meetings that have sequences to them, right? So if an action by one committee needs to go to the Judiciary and Public Safety or the Personnel and Finance Committee, two pretty standard maneuvers in our county, that really puts a long window, 2 weeks, if everything is really tight, for action to take place. And while I don't think we are generally cramming things through committees in real fast ways, I also know that sometimes the content of meetings, the draft versions of resolutions and things like that are still coming together 7 days before our meetings, and sometimes that's a cascading effect from what one committee or commission did or what the board may have done. So I'm really interested to hear further discussion here, because I think there's elements to this that are really helpful and increase the ability for ourselves as well as the public to follow along what's going on in our committees and commissions. But I do have some skepticism about the scope and how that may affect timing of our committees. Thank you.
Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I would like to point out for the county board here is that the intent of this resolution is not to also then make public closed session items, bids, stuff of sensitive nature that may impede upon operations. This is just for agendas, resolutions, and the supporting documents that are public. Again, if a committee such as the Solid Waste Board goes into closed session, this rule would not require them to publish sensitive stuff that is discussed in closed session. So I just want to add that piece there for potentially sensitive information that people may be concerned about.
Supervisor Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also will say I share a lot of similar cautions as Supervisor Schlesinger had mentioned. I'm supporting this, but this is going to be cumbersome. I'll say that from a JPS point of view, I have had this kind of enforced policy at JPS where if we talk about it at JPS, it's going to be on the web. We're going to supply the information to the public. And it is cumbersome, and it is challenging. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. We have had to do, it's really Cassie. I say we, and it's really her doing the work. And by the way, she does a great job doing this, especially since I've asked her to do more than what she probably does other places. But I'll tell you that, if there are issues, we can absolutely do amended agendas and get that out. And this just says that it's made available. That's all. So we're not sending this out to people unless they specifically ask for it. And the way that I look at it is that it is work as a chair. It's more work. But is that work beneficial for the public? And it is, hands down. I remember sitting through JPS meetings when I was just starting when I was just appointed. And it was so difficult to follow along and understand what exactly is going on. And I don't know how someone can solicit feedback from the public without letting them know what we're talking about. And I actually really have a problem with that. Because now we're just talking to each other, and we're creating these little fiefdom. And for me, that's a problem. And I know that many of you have reached out to me in the beginning because you were looking for information that wasn't there, and it was challenging. And there were times we had an issue with the website, and it wasn't there, but we fixed it. And so I think when you look at this, you have to balance the benefit with the costs. And ask, is this something that's beneficial for those we serve? Does it create more transparency? Does it enhance the ability for public to make comments and other supervisors to make comments at committee versus having them here? And that's really why I started doing it. Because as I've said many times, I want to have conversation at the committees. The only way you can do that is provide information. And so I think this goes a long way in that. Is it perfect? No, it's not. But it's something that we can do to help each other out and those we serve. Thank you.
Supervisor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess maybe I misunderstand this a little bit, but I was in a situation as a new supervisor and as acting as a chairman. And of course, as the chairman, you don't know exactly all the rules and what you're supposed to do. In my meeting that I had, we got talking about our agenda, but we went off our agenda. We went to other items. And at that time, I didn't know that stuff as a new supervisor again. So we got talking about stuff that we weren't supposed to, which should have been out of order, and I made a mistake. So I guess I understand what this means because, you know, you ask the public to comment on something, and you get talking about something else, and you add into something else that came on the board, and that wasn't on the list. So this, I really understand, and this makes sense, especially as a new supervisor and having no idea what I was supposed to do in a meeting. This makes perfect sense that, again, as the chairman, you're not supposed to get off on tangents to other things. You should only stay what's on there. And that was the second time that I did it where I learned. So I know this is very important because the public needs to know, which is what this is about. And if it's not something that's on there, you really shouldn't get into, but bring it up for the next meeting. And I think that's the proper way. So this makes a lot of sense now, based on my experience. So I just want to say that.
Supervisor Nussbaum.
I think Mike wants to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did just want to make sure to bring 2 points to the board's attention. One is just a point of information, which is that we do have budgeted agenda preparation software, and we're very close to signing a contract. Have selected a particular software, a particular vendor. It will take several months to implement, but once this software is implemented, it will automate the process of preparing a committee meeting packet. So our intent is that by the end of this year, hopefully, we should have that set up to go, and all that would be, you know, the hard work will be done in preparing the agenda items. But then once that's done, the clerk or the committee chair can literally just click a button and the whole packet will automatically be posted to the website as well as emailed to all the committee members. So that's already a process. We plan to do that regardless of the rule change. Timing may be a little bit of an issue. The other thing I just wanted to make sure the board considered is that as I read this, there really aren't any particular exceptions to that 7-day rule. And an example where that might be a concern is the bonding resolution you just passed. The way bonding works is the board has to pass 2 resolutions. The one we passed tonight, the board passed tonight, authorizing the borrowing in general. What happens then is our advisors and brokers go out and actually try to sell the bonds, you know, and try to get the best interest rate they can, et cetera. We don't get the final results back from that auction until maybe 2 days before the board meeting next month. So what we normally do, or what everybody does, every county I've been with does, is, you know, we schedule a Personnel and Finance Committee meeting to meet at, 5:30 or 5:45 right before the board meeting. So they can pass the resolution because we won't have the numbers to put in that resolution until the day before, and then it has to go to the board meeting for the board's decision to pass it. And obviously that doesn't meet that 7-day schedule, and that really has potential for throwing a serious monkey wrench into our borrowing process. And there may be other examples as well.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The public needs to know. I think everyone is aware that the agenda for every meeting is published 1 week before the committee meeting. So anyone who wants to know can look at the agenda. Now, I interpret this resolution as requiring documents that will be presented to the committee to be published 7 days before the meeting. We've just heard Director of Administration say the administration is planning to provide documents in respect to a particular issue ahead of time. That's good. But I can't imagine that every document used at a meeting for 33 committees will have to be available to the public 7 days before the meeting. Now, you can vote for it, go ahead, but see what the impact will be. You're going to be suspending the rules every meeting.
Supervisor Flom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I call the question on the resolution.
Okay, question. Question second is, question been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. I would say the ayes have it. Pardon? Right, so I would say the ayes have it, yes. Right. Yes. For the call of question, right. That's what it was. Now we'll vote on it.
Do you want to? Never mind. So now you're going to vote on the resolution,
On the resolution.
and you want it
Questions?
by machine?
By machine will do it. That way there's no questions. Pardon? She's saying something to me?
You just
Oh.
choose for
So if you're in favor of the resolution, signify by, or vote A. If you're not, vote nay. Failed. Tied vote, so it fails.
That needs a two-thirds.
Yeah, it was.
Failed on 2/3. It's 17-17, yeah.
You failed majority two.
Right.
Two-thirds. So it's
Right.
close.
So. Okay, there's a motion on the floor to adjourn. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. We are adjourned.